Chapter 1357. Everyone present knew that this was the crucial moment of the junior sect master selection. Whether or not Yi Guqin could forge a high-grade divine weapon would depend on whether or not he could surpass Nangong Juyin and Song Feichen in terms of forging. I think Yi Guqin is in a tough spot. Nangong Juyin is using two types of supreme rare flames and the power of the 10,000-year fire spirit. With the help of the god-tier forging technique, no one can compare to him. That's right. Even Song Feichen is throwing caution to the wind and taking out the fire spirit crystal. He's going all out. If Yi Guqin doesn't have a decisive trump card, it's impossible for him to win against these two. Everyone present, whether they were from Divine Artifacts sect or the spectators, was well aware of this. If Yi Guqin didn't have a decisive trump card, it was almost impossible for him to surpass Nangong Juyin. It was also because of this that Yi Guqin had attracted the attention of everyone. They all wanted to know what kind of trump card the disciple chosen by the Southern Cauldron Saint had. God-tier forging technique? Yi Guqin sized up Nangong Juyin, but he didn't look surprised. Duan Tianfeng had already told him that Xiao Gongfu had imparted the god-tier forging technique to Nangong Juyin. It seems like I can only use that move. But before that, I have to think of a way to borrow the power of the 10,000-year fire spirit. Yi Guqin muttered to himself. Only those who understood the forbidden forging technique knew how heaven-defying it was. But at the same time, it was also very difficult to succeed. It was even more difficult than the god-tier forging technique. Yi Guqin pondered. If he wanted to forge a divine weapon with the forbidden forging technique, the success rate was very low. The only possibility was to borrow the power of the 10,000-year fire spirit. The power of the 10,000-year fire spirit could not only assist Yi Guqin in forging, but also improve the quality of the divine weapon. However, compared to Nangong Juyin and Song Feichen, Yi Guqin had a major flaw. He had never stayed in Divine Artifacts sect before, so he naturally didn't know how to borrow the power of the 10,000-year fire spirit. This was Yi Guqin's first time coming to this heavenly cauldron. He was not as familiar with it as Nangong Juyin and Song Feichen. The crowd also saw Yi Guqin's predicament. I'm afraid Yi Guqin is in trouble now. He doesn't know how to borrow the power of the 10,000-year fire spirit. Gu Beihan shook his head slightly. Sigh, it's all for naught. Yang Qi sighed in his heart. Previously, Yi Guqin's performance had stunned many people. They believed that he would be Nangong Juyun's strongest opponent. As a result, they now knew that Yi Guqin would not borrow the power of the 10,000-year fire spirit. This was an absolute disadvantage. So it's like this. Gu Xiangling bit her lip. Although she was also smithing, she knew very well that she could no longer compete for first place. Compared to Song Feichen, Gu Xiangling felt that Yi Guqin could be compared to Nangong Juyin. Just when everyone thought that Yi Guqin would be at a disadvantage, Yi Guqin did something that no one expected. He walked step by step toward the entrance of the bronze tower. What's going on? What is Yi Guqin doing? Don't tell me he's going to enter the bronze tower. Everyone was surprised to see Yi Guqin's actions. Whether it was the people of the Divine Artifacts sect or the other spectators, they all knew that the bronze tower was where the 10,000-year fire spirit was sealed. Anyone who rashly entered would not have a good ending. Not to mention Yi Guqin, who was only at the divine dwelling stage. Even a sovereign or a false saint would have a great risk of dying. Even a heavenly tribulation saint would lose a layer of skin, even if they didn't die. This was because the chaos heavenly fire controlled by the 10,000-year fire spirit was too powerful. Some saints with weaker physical bodies could not withstand it. What is he doing? Is he committing suicide? Gu Beihan frowned. If Yi Guqin died in the Divine Artifacts sect, the Divine Artifacts sect would be in a lot of trouble. Sir Yi, please wait. It's too dangerous inside the bronze tower. Don't go in. Seeing this, Gu Xiangling hurriedly shouted with a nervous look on her face. She thought that Yi Guqin did not know how dangerous the 10,000-year fire spirit was. Yi Guqin turned around and smiled. He did not say anything and continued to walk in. On the other side, Xiao Gongxing and Nangong Huajing were also surprised. Xiao Gongxing turned to look at Duan Tianfeng and said in a playful tone, Duan Tianfeng, Could it be that your disciple has lost all hope and decided to commit suicide because he knows he can't win? Don't worry. Even if your disciple dies, my disciple will live well, Duan Tianfeng said coldly. Although he said that, Duan Tianfeng's heart was beating like a drum. After all, he was a member of the Divine Artifacts sect and knew the power of the 10,000-year fire spirit better than anyone else. To be honest, Duan Tianfeng did not understand why Yi Guqin would take such a risk. However, in his eyes, Yi Guqin was never a reckless person. He naturally had his reasons for doing so. What is Yi Guqin trying to do? Is he really courting death? Nangong Juyin muttered to himself as he watched Yi Guqin walk into the cave. He vaguely felt that Yi Guqin must have his reasons for doing so. However, Nangong Juyin could not figure out what trump card Yi Guqin had that allowed him to safely face the power of the 10,000-year fire spirit. Meanwhile, Song Feichen sneered in his heart. Yi Guqin is even crazier than me. In order to borrow the power of the 10,000-year fire spirit, he is willing to risk his life. Most of the people present thought that Yi Guqin was crazy. Only Yi Guqin himself knew that his mind was extremely clear. Yi Guqin naturally would not do something that would lead to his own death. However, in Yi Guqin's view, taking a certain risk in order to obtain power and transform was worth it. Yi Guqin directly stepped into the giant bronze tower. In the outside world, the world was silent. He actually managed to enter. This Yi Guqin is really capable of doing some shocking things wherever he goes. Many people sighed with emotion. Wherever Yi Guqin was, there would be no lack of big things. Father, why didn't you stop young Master Yi? Gu Xiangling asked, her face pale. Sai, this is his own choice. Moreover, we can't interfere in the competition. Gu Beihan shook his head. How could this be? Gu Xiangling was slightly dazed. She did have a good impression of Yi Guqin. His character, experience and other aspects were far better than Nangong Juyin and Song Feichen. However, let alone divine dwelling experts, even saints would not feel good inside the giant bronze tower. Therefore, the chances of Yi Guqin coming out alive were very slim. Everyone thought that Yi Guqin was most likely going to die this time. While such thoughts arose in the outside world, Yi Guqin himself had already entered the giant bronze tower. Chapter 1358. As soon as Yi Guqin stepped into the bronze pagoda, the first thing he felt was heat. It was extremely hot. It felt as if he had stepped into the fiery purgatory of the 18 levels of hell. The surroundings were densely packed with burning flames. Yi Guqin immediately activated the demonic heart flame to protect himself. Only then did he manage to offset part of the heat. At this time, Yi Guqin finally had the time to observe the situation in the pagoda. The entire pagoda looked bottomless, like an abyss. Yi Guqin was now at the top of the bronze pagoda. Logically speaking, this should be the place where the flames were the weakest and thinnest. However, even here, Yi Guqin had to activate the demonic heart flame to protect himself. One could imagine how powerful the 10,000-year fire spirit was. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Cultivating the 9 tribulations Heart Sutra and overcoming the 9 tribulations to become a god is a heaven-defying act. How can there be no danger? Yi Guqin's eyes were shining. How could he not know the power of the 10,000-year fire spirit? Previously, Duan Tianfeng had warned him that if he could not, he should not force himself to borrow the power of the 10,000-year fire spirit, because he might be injured or even killed if he was not careful. However, Yi Guqin had already made his own decision. He cultivated the 9 tribulations Heart Sutra and had an unparalleled physical body. He also had 2 types of unique flames to protect himself. It was not impossible for him to try to overcome the tribulations with the 10,000-year fire spirit. Yi Guqin naturally knew how dangerous it was to use the 10,000-year fire spirit to overcome the tribulations. However, if he did not try because of the danger, Yi Guqin did not know how long it would take for him to completely overcome the 4 tribulations. Time waits for no man. When I reach Sky Burial Island, I will face Dihaotian. Before that, I will not miss any opportunity that can make me stronger. Yi Guqin's eyes were cold. He felt a sense of urgency in his heart. Because at Sky Burial Island, he would have an ultimate battle with Dihaotian. Di Haotian was definitely a powerful opponent that could not be underestimated. If my guess is correct, the 10,000-year fire spirit should be at the bottom of the bronze tower. Yi Guqian thought to himself as he began to move towards the bottom of the bronze tower. For every 1,000 feet it descended, the temperature of the surrounding space would rise by a level. In the end, Yi Guqian had no choice but to refine the exalted void blaze as well. White and black flames intertwined, forming a flame shield around Yi Guqian's body. Even so, the gradually rising temperature caused Yi Guqian to frown. After a long descent, Yi Guqian finally came to a stop. This was because they had already reached the bottom of the bronze tower. Looking over, Yi Guqian's gaze suddenly froze. At the bottom of the bronze tower was an ancient giant formation. The entire formation extended to the inner walls of the bronze pagoda, becoming one with the pagoda. This was clearly a formation used to suppress and seal. And at the bottom of the bronze pagoda, endless chaotic flames roiled. The flame was extremely strange. It was a colorful chaotic color, as if it was the combination of thousands of strange flames. That's the chaotic divine flame, Yi Guqian murmured. He had heard from the old drunkard that the flame controlled by the 10,000-year fire spirit was a chaotic divine flame born from the chaos beyond the heavens. This chaotic divine flame was of extremely high quality and extremely powerful. It had even surpassed the supreme grade rare flames of the universe and reached the level of divine flame. It was rumored that during the primordial age, some divine craftsmen who forged famed primordial swords used divine flames to forge them. Divine flames were of a higher level than supreme grade rare flames of the universe. Even the sect master of the divine weapon sect, Gu Beihan, did not possess such a flame. Master Xiao and Duan Tianfeng did not possess it either. This was because divine flames were too rare and too rare. Even if one could encounter one, refining it was extremely difficult. It was several times more difficult than refining supreme-grade rare flames of the universe. Because of these conditions, divine flames rarely appeared in the world and were rarely controlled by anyone. Yi Guqian did not expect to see a divine flame here. The chaotic divine flame is somewhat compatible with my chaotic sea of consciousness. Yi Guqian pondered. His sea of consciousness also had the chaotic attribute. However, Yi Guqian's attention was still on the chaotic divine flame. There was an existence similar to a qilin in it. It looked like a qilin beast, but it was not a real living creature. It was a fire spirit formed by the chaotic divine flame. Is that the 10,000-year fire spirit? Yi Guqian murmured. Just as Yi Guqian was paying attention to the 10,000-year fire spirit, the 10,000-year fire spirit also noticed Yi Guqian. Although the 10,000-year fire spirit was not very intelligent, it would instinctively attack any living creature that approached it. This was because the chaotic divine flame was unwilling to be subdued by anyone. Therefore, the 10,000-year fire spirit would attack anyone that approached it. It was also because of this that no one dared to enter the bronze pagoda. This was because not many people could withstand the burning of the chaotic divine flame. Roar. The 10,000-year fire spirit was surrounded by colorful chaotic divine flame. It roared at Yi Guqian and charged at him. The monstrous chaotic divine flame spread out and formed a huge fire tide. It almost filled the entire bronze pagoda and spewed out of the cave. At the same time, the crowd outside the bronze tower saw the surging primal chaos divine flame gushing out of the cave. What's going on? Why did the flame suddenly surge out? Could it be that the 10,000-year fire spirit is rebelling? The onlookers were shocked. No, I'm afraid that Yi Guqian has provoked the 10,000-year fire spirit, Gu Beihan said in a deep voice. What? As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. Although Yi Guqian had entered the bronze pagoda, it was not certain that he would be killed, as long as he did not provoke the 10,000-year fire spirit. But looking at the state of the flames, it was obvious that the 10,000-year fire spirit had been provoked. How can this be? Gu Xiangling bit her red lips. She originally had a glimmer of hope that Yi Guqian would come out safely. But now, it seemed that the probability of Yi Guqian being alive was almost zero, not to mention getting out of there safely. This was because everyone knew that it was almost impossible for a divine dwelling stage expert to resist the primal chaos divine fire. I thought that Yi Guqian, who had swept across the sacred emperor world, would have some ability. It seems that I have overestimated him. Nangong Juyin sneered as he refined his divine weapon. After dealing with the most troublesome opponent, there was no longer any suspense about the result. It was almost impossible for Gu Xiangling to surpass him. As for Song Feichen, even though he had brought out the fire spirit crystal, Nangong Juyin did not care about him at all. The position of junior sect master has finally fallen into my hands. Nangong Juyin smiled happily. Chapter 1359. In the eyes of the crowd, Yi Guqin, who had caused the fire spirit to go berserk, had no chance of surviving. I didn't expect that Yi Guqin, who had stirred up a storm in the holy imperial world, would end up like this. Yes, I was looking forward to his performance on Sky Burial Island. I wanted to see the ultimate battle between Yi Guqin and Di Haotian. Now it seems that there is no hope. The crowd sighed and sighed. This time, even Duan Tianfeng's heart was pounding. Although he believed that Yi Guqin had his own plans, he found it hard to imagine how Yi Guqin would survive. Yi Guqin, can you create another miracle? Duan Tianfeng muttered to himself. Just as everyone in the outside world thought that Yi Guqin had died, a voice rang out. At the bottom of the bronze tower, Yi Guqin was in a life and death struggle with the fire spirit. The fire spirit's only attack was the chaotic divine fire. Once the chaotic divine fire appeared, all other flames would submit. Even if Yi Guqin used the demonic heart flame and the Daoyuo void incineration flame, it was useless. The scorching heat almost immediately charred Yi Guqin's skin to an incomparably black color. The pain of being burned by the chaotic divine fire was not something that anyone could endure. Xianyuan heavy water. Yi Guqin used the Xianyuan heavy water from his spiritual dwelling in his dantian to help him resist the power of the chaotic divine fire. However, it was better than nothing. Heart Sutra of Nine Tribulations. Yi Guqin activated the Heart Sutra of Nine Tribulations and began to pass the tribulation. His dantian seemed to have turned into the origin of a black hole. The chaotic divine fire around him surged into it. In an instant, Yi Guqin felt a burning pain as if he was being torn apart. Even with Yi Guqin's composure, his face turned pale and his body trembled violently. His muscles and bones were charred at a speed visible to the naked eye. Ancient God's Heart. Yi Guqin activated the sealed Ancient God's Heart. The blood of the ancient gods flowed out as if it was free. This was the heart of Tiantong King from the ancient god tribe. The ancient god blood that flowed out of it contained a strong life force. However, even with the help of the ancient god's blood, Yi Guqin's situation was still very critical. This was because the primal chaos divine flame was too powerful. Even the ancient god's blood could not replenish Yi Guqin's physical vitality. Yi Guqin took out a few more stalks of sacred medicine. With his current status in the Sword Dynasty, sacred herbs were not particularly rare to him. Yi Guqin immediately took out 4 saint-level herbs and refined them into his body. In an instant, surging life essence spread out from his body, nourishing Yi Guqin's burned meridians and internal organs. At the same time, Yi Guqin also took out some isotribute elixirs and pills to reduce the damage of the chaos divine flame. Although the effect was minimal, it was better than nothing. Under Yi Guqin's various methods, although he was still suffering from the pain of purgatory, he was barely able to hang on to a thread of life. Of course, the main reason for this was that Yi Guqin cultivated the Nine Tribulations Heart Sutra. The Nine Tribulations Heart Sutra could transform the power of the Chaos Divine Flame into tribulation power. Otherwise, without the help of the Nine Tribulations Heart Sutra, Yi Guqin would not have been able to survive the burning of the Chaos Divine Flame, no matter how strong his physical body was. After all, this was a flame that even honorables and false saints were afraid of. The 10,000-year-old fire spirit was also very surprised. It did not expect its chaos divine flame to be unable to kill this lowly human warrior in front of it. However, the 10,000-year-old fire spirit only knew how to use the chaos divine flame to attack. Therefore, it only continued to use the chaos divine flame to burn Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin's dantian also began to transform again in the chaos divine flame tribulation. At this moment in the outside world, while everyone was lamenting Yi Guqin's death, their attention was also on the final battle. Gu Xiangling's divine weapon was almost complete. The elders of the Divine Artifacts sect concluded that the divine weapon Gu Xiangling refined in the end would probably be at the level of a quasi-tribulation divine weapon. This was already a very good result. But now, none of the elders of the Divine Artifacts sect could laugh, because this result could not be compared to Nangong Juyun's. On the other side, Song Feichen was also doing his best. This won't do. If this continues, I will definitely not be able to beat Nangong Juyun. Song Feichen could feel the shocking fluctuations from Nangong Juyun. He gritted his teeth and poured his true qi into the fire spirit crystal again. In an instant, more chaos divine flame was drawn over. Not good. Brat, stop. First Elder Yang Qi's expression changed when he saw this. The 10,000-year-old fire spirit had already gone berserk. Song Feichen would definitely not be able to control the power of the fire spirit crystal now. As expected, a large mass of primal chaos divine fire surged towards Song Feichen. Song Feichen's expression changed drastically when he saw this. He hurriedly retreated. But even so, he was still affected and let out an ear-piercing scream. Ah! My hand, my hand. Song Feichen's entire body was charred black. He raised his hand, and the charred bones of his hands were exposed. Damn it! Yang Qi's expression darkened. He landed in front of Song Feichen in a flash and hurriedly took out a pill for Song Feichen to consume. But Song Feichen's hands were already burned to the bone. Even if they could be preserved, they would probably be crippled. You idiot! Can't you even maintain the most basic patience of a blacksmith? How could you do such a reckless thing? Yang Qi said resentfully. Song Feichen's face was pale and his heart was dead. From the moment Yang Qi interfered, he had already lost the right to compete for first place. Taking a step back, even without this reason, Song Feichen's hands would definitely not be able to complete the next forging. Song Feichen could be said to have tried to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. He had even ruined his future forging prospects. How could this be? It's all because of that Yi Guchen. If it wasn't for him causing the fire spirit to go berserk, I wouldn't have fallen to this state. Song Feichen's expression was grim as he blamed Yi Guchen. It's a pity that I didn't see Yi Guchen's death with my own eyes. Song Feichen thought viciously. With Song Feichen losing the right to participate, the outcome of the young sect master selection was almost obvious. Yi Guchen entering the Bronze Tower was equivalent to dying. Song Feichen's hands were crippled, and he lost the right to participate. Gu Xiangling's weapon was obviously incomparable to Nangong Juyun's. It was obvious who the final winner would be. Haha, as expected. Xiao Gongxing revealed a faint smile. Nangong Huajing also smiled. After all, Nangong Juyun was a prodigy of the Nangong family. If he became the young sect master and took control of the Divine Artifacts sect in the future, it would be extremely beneficial for the Nangong family. Just when everyone thought that the dust had settled, a voice suddenly rang out. Yi Guchen, who was inside the Bronze Tower, began to transform. Chapter 1360. At the bottom of the giant Bronze Tower, Yi Guchen was sitting cross-legged in the center of the endless primal chaos divine fire. His body was charred black, and not a single piece of intact flesh could be found. He was like an old monk in meditation, or an ancient Buddha undergoing nirvana. There wasn't the slightest movement. In fact, even his breathing and heartbeat were so weak that they were close to non-existent. If someone was present, they would even mistakenly think that Yi Guchen's body was a charred black statue. And in this state of death, Yi Guchen's dantian began to undergo earth-shaking changes. Inside his dantian and god dwellings, a miniature world seemed to be evolving. At the bottom of the divine dwelling, there was earth chi flowing, condensing into hard earth. The river formed by the mysterious origin heavy water flowed in the divine dwelling, and was burned by the primal chaos divine fire. It turned into mist and rushed to the top of the divine dwelling, as if turning into clouds and the firmament. And the primal chaos divine fire urged the flow of air, as if igniting the vitality of the entire divine dwelling. In some ancient records, the world was composed of the four great elements of earth, water, fire, and wind. The four elements formed the entire world. And at this moment, Just as the world began to evolve in Yi Guqin's divine dwelling, the order of the entire divine dwelling suddenly became chaotic, and the structure began to become unstable. The reason was very simple. This was because Yi Guqin's divine dwelling still lacked the wind element. Without one element, the entire world would be incomplete, and it would begin to collapse. Rumble. In the end, the world in Yi Guqin's divine dwelling didn't completely take shape, and only a prototype was formed. And it was also the moment the prototype world was formed that Yi Guqin erupted with an extremely powerful aura. His cultivation level began to loosen, and he smoothly broke through to the 7th layer of the divine dwelling. Because he had only formed the prototype world of the divine dwelling, and hadn't transformed into a true world-level divine dwelling, Yi Guqin's cultivation base had only broken through a small realm. However, it was conceivable that Yi Guqin's cultivation would soar when Yi Guqin truly condensed a world-class divine dwelling. After the transformation of the embryonic divine dwelling world was completed, Yi Guqin's body finally began to move. He slowly stood up. A cracking sound came from the charred surface of his body. A layer of charred dead skin cracked and fell off, revealing his fair skin. Finally, the charred surface of Yi Guqin's body peeled off completely, revealing his perfect figure. His figure was tall and slender, and his body was well proportioned. He did not have any explosive muscles, but the power that was faintly hidden within him was something that could not be ignored. This time, the benefits of Yi Guqin's tribulation were not limited to merely forming the embryonic form of a divine dwelling world. At the same time, the primal chaos divine flame tempered Yi Guqin's body. His physical body seemed to be showing signs of transforming into a 3-star ancient god. Of course, it was obviously not that simple to truly transform into a 3-star ancient god. Now, I finally understand why the world god's abode is called the legendary god's abode, Yi Guqin whispered. This was because, to a certain extent, the world divine dwelling was somewhat similar to the sacred emperor realm of the Thousand-Leaf Saint Emperor. But it should be said that Yi Guqin was a divine dwelling stage expert, and the Thousand-Leaf Saint Emperor was an immortal Saint Emperor. The gap between these two stages could not be described as a chasm. It was simply impossible to compare them together. But the world divine dwelling allowed Yi Guqin, at the divine dwelling stage, to faintly form the embryonic form of the sacred emperor realm. Wasn't this cheating? If I condense the world divine dwelling and use it to suppress the enemy, wouldn't it be equivalent to the Thousand-Leaf Saint Emperor, using the sacred emperor realm? Yi Guqin exhaled deeply. He finally understood the heaven-defying aspect of the world divine dwelling. This was equivalent to allowing Yi Guqin to comprehend the world laws of the immortal Saint Emperor level at the divine dwelling stage. Wasn't this heaven-defying? The 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra is indeed worthy of being called a supreme cultivation technique. Yi Guqin slowly suppressed the shock in his heart. It could be said that Yi Guqin was only one step away from transforming into a world divine dwelling. But Yi Guqin's harvest this time was far more than that. His eyes, with a hint of a smile, looked at the 10,000-year-old fire spirit that was frozen in the void not far away. If the 10,000-year-old fire spirit was a human, then its expression at this moment must be one of bewilderment. This lowly and insignificant human martial art practitioner in front of it had actually survived its chaos divine flame. Not only that, but the chaos divine fire also seemed to have no effect on him. The 10,000-year-old fire spirit seemed to be in disbelief. It opened its mouth and roared, spitting out another pillar of fire. However, the pillar of fire did not cause the slightest harm to Yi Guqin when it fell on his body. Not even a strand of his hair was burnt. Yi Guqin's lips curved in a faint smile. Amidst the astonishment of the 10,000-year-old fire spirit, he slowly lifted his hand. Puff! A wisp of multicolored divine flame that looked like primal chaos appeared between his fingers. Roar! Just as the wisp of chaos divine fire appeared, the 10,000-year-old fire spirit roared violently, as though it was venting the shock and disbelief in its heart. In its opinion, other than itself, it was impossible for anyone to control the chaos divine fire. However, the human in front of it controlled it. With the 10,000-year-old fire spirit's low intelligence, it could not understand the situation at all. Yi Guqin wore a faint smile on his face. The divine dwellings in his body had been refined by the chaos divine fire. Naturally, they would not be harmed by the chaos divine fire. Even like the Xianyuan heavy water, Yi Guqin could control the chaos divine fire. Moreover, as the power of the chaos divine fire was too overbearing, the Nirvana demonic flame and Daoyuo void incineration flame in Yi Guqin's body were swallowed by the chaos divine fire. As long as it was related to flames, it would be refined by the chaos divine fire. Therefore, Yi Guqin only had one type of flame in his body, and that was the chaos divine fire. However, the chaos divine fire was many times stronger than the Daoyuo void incineration flame and Nirvana demonic flame combined. There was no comparison between the two. At this moment, Yi Guqin stared thoughtfully at the 10,000-year-old fire spirit. The 10,000-year-old fire spirit trembled all over. Apart from the chaos divine fire, it had no other means to fight against its enemy. In other words, it was no threat to Yi Guqin at all. However, it was possible for Yi Guqin to refine it. At the thought of this, the 10,000-year-old fire spirit had a feeling of trembling. I have an idea, but I don't know if the sect master of the divine artifacts sect and the others will come after me after I do this. Yi Guqin chuckled softly. If the 10,000-year-old fire spirit was gone, Gu Beihan would probably want to kill him. Unfortunately, according to Yi Guqin's plan, he would need the 10,000-year-old fire spirit's power to forge the sword with the forbidden art. Yi Guqin's chaos divine fire alone would not be enough. Everyone in the outside world probably thinks that I've died. It's time to go out. Yi Guqin thought to himself as he changed into a black robe. His figure was slender and his eyes were calm. He stepped into the void and walked out of the bronze pagoda. Chapter 1361. Outside the bronze tower. The current situation seemed to have been settled. Gu Beihan's eyes were filled with worry and helplessness. First, Elder Yang Qi's face was dark, and he didn't say a word. Song Feichen's face was ashen, and his eyes were filled with resentment. In his opinion, Yi Guqin wanted to teach him a lesson even if he was dead. Because of him, his hands were crippled and he lost the chance to compete for the championship. Father, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Gu Xiangling walked to Gu Beihan's side after the competition ended. Her beautiful face was filled with worry. She had used all her strength to forge a quasi-tribulation weapon. For someone her age, it was already extremely outstanding. Unfortunately, there was still Nangong Juyun, who was even more monstrous. He had dual supreme-grade rare flames and a god-grade forging technique. Nangong Juyun was undoubtedly a top-tier forging genius. Haha, whether it was in the past or now, the outcome hasn't changed. Xiao Gongshu smiled slightly, completely relaxing his mind. In the beginning, he didn't take Yi Guqin seriously. However, when Yi Guqin displayed surprising abilities, Xiao Gongshu couldn't help but take him seriously. But now the outcome was set. His disciple, Nangong Juyun, would become the junior sect master of the Divine Artifacts sect. Duan Tianfeng didn't say a word. It was just that his already aged face appeared even more tired. There was also a hint of self-blame in his eyes. What he cared about the most now was Yi Guqin's life and death, not the result of the competition. For Duan Tianfeng, as long as Yi Guqin could survive, he didn't care if he lost the competition or the bet. When Nangong Huajing saw Duan Tianfeng's expression, a trace of pity flashed across her eyes. She no longer had any feelings for Duan Tianfeng, but they did have a beautiful past. Senior brother Duan, Huajing said before that we should let bygones be bygones. Isn't it good to let go of your obsession and live in seclusion? If that was the case, things wouldn't have turned out this way and Yi Guqin wouldn't have died. Nangong Huajing thought that she was comforting Duan Tianfeng. However, when he heard the words Yi Guqin, Duan Tianfeng retorted as if he was provoked. That's impossible. Yi Guqin has his own plans. He didn't even die when the three overlord forces tried to kill him on the Tianhuang plains. How could he die here? Duan Tianfeng refused to believe it. Sigh, senior brother Duan, you're still as stubborn as ever, refusing to accept the truth. Nangong Huajing shook her head slightly. However, just as she finished speaking, an indifferent voice suddenly sounded. Oh, the truth? What kind of facts? Hearing this, Nangong Huajing was slightly stunned. However, when Gu Xiangling heard this voice, her beautiful eyes could not help but widen. Her clear eyes were filled with unexpected joy. Many people present were also stunned. Their gazes simultaneously turned towards the source of the sound. It was inside the cave of the giant bronze tower. This can't be, can it? An elder's eyes almost popped out of their sockets as he gasped. They could not believe it, but that voice did indeed come from inside the cave. Thousands of eyes fell on the entrance of the cave at the same time. Under everyone's shocked and incredulous gazes, a young man in a black robe stepped out calmly. His black hair fluttered in the wind, his eyes were calm, and his handsome face was very calm. Who else could it be but Yi Guqin? Yi Guqin! Everyone was in an uproar. It was as if a pot had exploded. Everyone stared at Yi Guqin as if they had seen a ghost. Didn't they say that even supremacies and pseudo-saints would be killed inside? What was going on now? Compared to the shock of the onlookers, the elders of the Divine Artifacts sect, Yang Qi, and Gu Beihan were also a bit stunned. They often came to the heavenly cauldron to forge, so they were very clear about the power of the 10,000-year-old fire spirit. That was the Chaos Divine Fire. It was more powerful than a supreme-grade rare flame. Even Gu Beihan did not pay attention to the Chaos Divine Fire, because he knew that it was impossible. A 10,000-year-old fire spirit was not something that ordinary people could subdue. That was why Gu Beihan and the others were so shocked. The Chaos Divine Fire's rampage also indirectly meant that Yi Guqin had indeed encountered a 10,000-year-old fire spirit. They could not imagine how Yi Guqin had survived. What is going on? Why is he still alive? Why? Song Feichen's face froze, and then he felt as if his head was about to explode. His hands were crippled by the Chaos Divine Fire, and he was disqualified from the competition. But now, Yi Guqin walked out of the bronze tower as if nothing had happened. Who the fuck could stand this? Song Feichen felt like he was going crazy. He was affected by the Chaos Divine Fire, and became so miserable, but Yi Guqin was safe and sound. Song Feichen was not the only one who was shocked. Nangong Zhuyun's mind was also shaken, and his hands almost became unsteady. How is this possible? The veins on Nangong Zhuyun's temples throbbed. This Yi Guqin was too lucky. Meanwhile, Duan Tianfeng, Gu Xiangling, and the Divine Eagle Blackie all breathed a long sigh of relief. Especially Duan Tianfeng, whose self-blame and dejection were swept away. Although he did not know how Yi Guqin could come out alive, this was naturally the best outcome. Yi Guqin looked at Nangong Huajing indifferently and said, "I'm sorry to disappoint you that I didn't die in the bronze tower." Humph. Xiao Gongxing flicked his sleeves and did not say a word with a cold face. He was also in disbelief and had many questions in his heart. But he obviously could not bring himself to ask Yi Guqin. Nangong Huajing was speechless by Yi Guqin's question. Her beautiful face alternated between green and white, and she was very embarrassed. Just now, she said that she wanted Duan Tianfeng to admit the fact that Yi Guqin had died. In the end, Yi Guqin immediately came out of the bronze tower. That was a slap in the face. But soon, Nangong Huajing adjusted and said, "Yi Guqin, you're indeed very unexpected. I'm afraid no one expected you to come out alive." But so what? The result of the Junior Sect Master selection has been decided. There's no suspense. Many people nodded in agreement with Nangong Huajing's words. Indeed, Nangong Zhuyun was almost firmly in the position of Junior Sect Master now. Even if Yi Guqin came out alive, what was the use? He could not win if he wanted to. Duan Tianfeng also shook his head and sighed. "That's enough, little Yi. It's good that you're safe. At most, we won't compete in this competition. If we lose the bet, so be it. Perhaps it's time to accept our fate." If Yi Guqin met with an accident because of him, Duan Tianfeng could not escape the blame. Therefore, Duan Tianfeng was willing to give up the bet. "Ah, Senior Duan Tianfeng, this doesn't seem like your style." Yi Guqin suddenly smiled. Everyone was stunned when they saw Yi Guqin's smile. That was because his smile was full of confidence. "I, Yi Guqin, will not accept my fate. Even if it's a taboo that defies the heavens, I will still forge a peerless weapon," Yi Guqin said firmly. He raised his hand and his black hair danced wildly. A blood-red aura was emitted from Yi Guqin's body, causing the heavens and earth to shake and the sky to change colors. It's the taboo forging technique. Duan Tianfeng's heart trembled violently. Was Yi Guqin going to use the taboo forging technique that even he had never used before? Chapter 1362. The word taboo was the most prominent feature of a taboo art. A taboo art was comparable to a god-tier art, and to a certain extent, it was even slightly more dangerous than a god-tier art. However, it was far more dangerous than a god-tier art. If a god-tier art failed, the worst that could happen was that the weapon would be scrapped. However, if a taboo art failed, it would usually cause a lot of harm to the artificer. A light injury could result in injury, while a heavy injury could result in death. It was precisely because taboo arts were extremely rare and had severe side effects that they were almost extinct among artificers. Generally speaking, only a madman would think of using a taboo art to forge a weapon. At this moment, everyone present was frozen in place when they sensed Yi Guqin's aura. This was especially true for those from Divine Artifacts sect. Their eyes were wide open and filled with shock. What kind of art is Yi Guqin trying to use? This aura is definitely not an ordinary art. It's not even a god-tier art. Yang Qi's heart trembled violently as he couldn't help but exclaim. Could it be a taboo art? Gu Beihan's eyes flickered with uncertainty as he spoke. What? A taboo art? Some of the elders of Divine Artifact sect gasped, their eyes filled with shock. A taboo art? What is a taboo art? Some of the spectators were puzzled. A taboo art is an extremely dangerous art. A light injury could result in the artificer's injury, while a heavy injury could result in death. However, a taboo art like this is usually comparable to a god-tier art, an elder of Divine Artifact sect explained. What? It's that dangerous? Is Yi Guqin trying to put his life on the line? Some of the spectators turned pale with fright after hearing the explanation. They didn't expect that a mere forging competition would put one's life in danger. Gu Xiangling's face paled slightly. She naturally knew how dangerous a taboo art was. Moreover, given the aura Yi Guqin was emitting, this taboo art was clearly the best, but also the most dangerous. Young Master Yi, you don't have to do this, Gu Xiangling said with a pale face. Was it worth it to put his life on the line for the position of junior sect master? Duan Tianfeng's emotions were also swaying. When he first met Yi Guqin and passed on his forbidden forging technique, he had indeed wanted Yi Guqin to use this forging technique to help him win the bet he had lost to Elder Xiao. However, after such a long time, Duan Tianfeng and Yi Guqin had already developed a master-disciple relationship. Now he would rather lose the bet than let Yi Guqin take the risk. Little Yi, you don't have to do this. Duan Tianfeng sighed. Yi Guqin's expression did not change as he said, Senior, this Yi is not doing this for you. I am also determined to forge a divine weapon that belongs to me. Yi Guqin had been planning to forge his own divine weapon for a long time. It was just that he didn't have the conditions and opportunity to do so. How could Yi Guqin miss out on such a good opportunity? As for the danger of the taboo forging technique, if Yi Guqin was afraid of danger, he would not have entered the giant bronze pagoda at all. Duan Tianfeng opened his mouth slightly when he saw the determination in Yi Guqin's eyes, but in the end he did not say anything. This was Yi Guqin's determination. You actually passed on the taboo forging technique to him. This is indeed unexpected. Elder Zhao's expression was unprecedentedly cold. He had thought that Nangong Zhuyun would definitely win the position of junior sect master. However, Yi Guqin walked out of the giant bronze pagoda alive, which exceeded Elder Zhao's expectations. Now he had even used the taboo forging technique. Even Xiao Gonggong felt a faint sense of unease in his heart. Yi Guqin was the one who had been plotting for such a long time. Would there be any problems because of him? Nangong Huajing's heart was also not calm. Both of them felt a trace of uneasiness in their hearts. So what if it's the taboo forging technique? Yi Guqin, with your strength, can you unleash the power of the taboo forging technique? Don't die before the divine weapon is forged. Nangong Zhuyin sneered. If everyone could succeed in using the taboo forging technique, it would not be called a taboo forging technique. Furthermore, Yi Guqin was not a blacksmith. Forging was just his side job. In Nangong Juyun's opinion, the success rate of using the taboo forging technique was much lower than using the divine grade forging technique. Only an ignorant person would recklessly guess the abilities of others. If you can't do it, then shut up. Yi Guqin's tone was cold as he ignored Nangong Juyun. You. Fine, I want to see if your taboo forging technique or my divine grade forging technique is stronger. Nangong Juyun threw caution to the wind. This time, he had to succeed in forging the divine weapon. Sun and Moon refining primary pole. Nangong Juyun activated the true young mystic flame and the extreme Enfrost flame with both hands. All sorts of sacred materials and supreme-grade treasures floated within the flames. Vaguely, it seemed as if two divine swords were about to be formed. Many people's gazes fell on Yi Guqin. Although Yi Guqin is going to use the taboo forging technique, the grade of his flames is slightly lower than Nangong Juyun's. Yeah, although the Origin Void Incineration Flame is comparable to Nangong Juyun's two flames, the Silent Destruction Demonic Flame is still slightly weaker. Just as everyone was discussing, Yi Guqin slowly raised his hand. Boom. A loud explosion was heard as a colorful, chaotic flame burst out from the ground. As soon as the flames appeared, even the void seemed to be slightly distorted by the heat. This flame is... When they saw Yi Guqin take out the Chaos Divine Flame, the entire place fell silent. The eyes of some blacksmiths from the Divine Weapon sect almost popped out of their sockets. Pinch me. Is what I'm seeing real? The Chaos Divine Flame. Yi Guqin took out the Chaos Divine Flame of the 10,000-year-old fire spirit. Screams and cries of surprise rose in all directions. Everyone was dumbfounded, their eyes wide open. Even the spectators and outsiders had seen Nangong Juyun, Song Feichen, and the others struggling to borrow the Chaos Divine Flame. But now, Yi Guqin casually took out the Chaos Divine Flame. This. Not to mention the onlookers, even Gu Beihan's expression became interesting. He even wanted to grab Yi Guqin and ask him how he had obtained the Chaos Divine Flame. As for Song Feichen, it was as if he had lost his soul. His eyes were dull, and he couldn't believe his eyes. His hands had been burned by the Chaos Divine Flame. Yi Guqin had taken control of the Chaos Divine Flame. This made Song Feichen's heart completely turn to ash. He couldn't compare to Yi Guqin. Duan Tianfeng, Gu Xiangling, and the others were also in disbelief, but they were happy for Yi Guqin. The Chaos Divine Flame was definitely a rare weapon for blacksmiths. It was far better than a supreme rare flame. Xiao Gongshu and Nangong Huajing were petrified. They stood rooted to the ground, their expressions unprecedentedly stiff. Of course, their shock couldn't compare to Nangong Juyun's, because he was Yi Guqin's opponent. Yi Guqin taking out the Chaos Divine Flame was like a bolt from the blue for Nangong Juyun, because when the Chaos Divine Flame appeared, all flames would submit. Chapter 1363. Nangong Juyun could clearly feel it when Yi Guqin took out the Chaos Divine Fire. His true Sun Mystic Fire and Sun Frosty Flame seemed to be suppressed and started to tremble. If the Supreme Grade Rare Fire was the noblest among flames, the Chaos Divine Fire was the king of flames. Once the Chaos Divine Fire appeared, all flames would submit to it. Chaos Divine Fire. How did you manage to control the Chaos Divine Fire? Nangong Juyun stared at Yi Guqin and gritted his teeth. Yi Guqin had refreshed his understanding of Nangong Juyun. Again and again, he displayed astonishing feats. At this moment, Nangong Juyun finally understood why Yi Guqin was so famous. Yi Guqin was not to be underestimated. It seems like I have underestimated you. Nangong Juyun gritted his teeth and felt uneasy. He had always been extremely talented and had a high status. He was the chosen one in everyone's eyes. However, Yi Guqin's appearance seemed to have woken him up. Juyun, calm down. The forbidden forging skill is not that easy to succeed. You still have the highest chance of winning. Xiao Gongshu shouted when he saw that Nangong Juyun's emotions were unstable. That's right, Juyun. You still have a chance of winning. Nangong Huajing encouraged him. Nangong Juyun's body shook when he heard what the two of them said. He suddenly woke up. That's right. Even if Yi Guqin has the Chaos Divine Fire, The success rate of him executing the forbidden forging skill is very low. However, I have a 60 to 70% chance of succeeding. Nangong Zhuyun's eyes were bright. After all, he was one of the 10 great young masters. He quickly adjusted his state of mind. Yi Guqin, don't even think about shaking my determination to win. Nangong Zhuyun took a deep breath and stopped being affected. He started to focus on forging his weapon. Yi Guqin smiled and shook his head when he heard that. Some people would not cry until they saw the coffin. At the thought of this, Yi Guqin did not hesitate any longer. He took out all sorts of forging treasured materials and began the final forging. Human soul forging sword, sword and life dual cultivation. That was the name of the forbidden forging skill. One could only forge one weapon in one's lifetime using this forging skill. When the weapon was completed, Yi Guqin would not be able to use this forbidden forging skill to forge other weapons. It was as though they were a couple for the rest of their lives. However, the target weapon. Of course, if Yi Guqin obtained other forbidden forging skills in the future, he could still use it. However, this taboo forging technique could only be used to forge this weapon. Next was the forging skill. Forging was. The higher grade divine weapon was forging weapons was forging Yun's weapon. However, none of them were Su Yun's Yun. They Tiu Yun. This was because the young master of divine artifacts sect would be chosen between the two of them. Yi Guqin, can you impress me? Gu Beihan murmured in his heart. Yi Chen Chen's Yi Chen Lu's Chen Gu to him, but he was he God hearing him godling Yi Chen? Gu Beihan did not give a clear answer. It was too troublesome for Yi Guqin to become Yu Su Su's Yu Su Su. However, if Yi Guqin's performance could make him look at him in a different light, then why not? Those overlords would not be so stupid as to destroy divine weapon sect, would they? In the end, Gu Beihan did not want to cause any more trouble. Now Gu Beihan was quietly watching the final battle between the two. Yi Guqin began to focus on forging the rough divine weapon. The 9-orifice divine stone that he had fused with the weapon could allow it to cultivate like a human. The mica spirit containing saliva could give the weapon spirituality. The zenith heaven metal could give the weapon natural Taoist rhymes. The tribulation blue gold could give the weapon the ability to resist tribulation lightning. The void mother gold could make the weapon lighter, and could even pierce through the void in the future. In short, Yi Guqin had made full use of every divine weapon. On the other hand, Nangong Zhuyun was not to be outdone. He had 2 sword prototypes floating in the flames. Vaguely, 2 completely opposite sword chis burst out. On the other hand, Yi Guqin was also forging a sword. TSK, these two are really at odds with each other. They're both forging swords. Some people exclaimed when they saw this. When the time came, the swords they forged would be a competition. Time passed. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. During these 7 days, Yi Guqin had been forging the sword prototypes. As for his forbidden forging technique, it was not complete yet. On the other hand, Nangong Zhuyun's weapon was about to take shape. Finally, at a certain moment, 2 violent roars rang out from the sea of flames. What's going on? It's Nangong Zhuyun. His weapon is complete. He actually succeeded. That's a god-tier forging technique. There was an uproar as everyone's eyes widened. Even Gu Beihan, Yang Qi, and the others turned their gazes over. The weapon is complete. Nangong Zhuyun was excited. He raised his hands and 2 swords burst out from the sea of flames. One of the swords was like a red jade. Flames flowed around it as if it was reflecting the light of the sun. As for the other sword, it looked like it was carved out of ice crystals. It gave off a bone-chilling aura. As soon as the 2 divine weapons appeared, all the attention in the world was taken away by them. Yin-yang dual swords complete. Nangong Zhuyun looked up to the sky and roared. In an instant, dark clouds rolled in the sky and thunder surged. Could that be? It can't be. After being baptized by the heavenly tribulation, young Master Nangong actually forged a heavenly tribulation weapon. A cry filled with disbelief rang out. The entire place was in an uproar. Everyone was shocked. No one had expected Nangong Zhuyun to be able to forge a heavenly tribulation weapon. This was simply heaven-defying. It was terrifying. Rumble. Lightning flashed between the dark clouds. Then silver lightning poured down. Nangong Juyun's yin-yang dual swords trembled under the baptism of the heavenly tribulation. You must make it through. Nangong Huajing could not help but clench her fists. Xiao Gongxing's breathing quickened. After all, they had planned this for a long time. Success or failure depended on this. If Nangong Juyun successfully passed the heavenly tribulation weapon, it would mean that he had successfully forged a heavenly tribulation weapon. If he failed to pass the heavenly tribulation weapon would be destroyed. Gu Beihan, Gu Xiangling, Yang Qi, and the others had some hope that the heavenly tribulation weapon would not be able to pass. In such a tense and torturous situation, finally, the dark clouds began to disperse. The heavenly tribulation also dissipated. The yin-yang dual swords had successfully passed the heavenly tribulation. They had become a heavenly tribulation weapon. Whoosh! An uproar sounded in all directions. That's great! Even with Duke Zhao's shrewdness, he couldn't help but smile. Did it succeed? Gu Xiangling's beautiful eyes were dazed. This meant that she would be forced to marry Nangong Juyun in the future. Ha ha ha, that's great. The heavenly tribulation weapon has been forged. Yi Guqin, what are you going to use to fight me? Nangong Juyun looked up to the sky and laughed. Yi Guqin's expression did not change. A heavenly tribulation weapon? It's not bad, but the weapon that I, Yi Guqin, forge will belong to me. It will be a unique and unparalleled weapon. Yi Guqin's eyes sparkled. Chapter 1364. The yin-yang twin swords that Nangong Juyun had forged floated in the air, radiating with sword qi as if they were announcing his success. Yi Guqin, what's the point of continuing to forge now? After forging the heavenly tribulation divine weapon, Nangong Juyun was completely relaxed. His expression was calm as if he could see the dawn of victory. Do you think you can rest easy after forging the heavenly tribulation divine weapon? Yi Guqin sneered. What do you mean? Nangong Juyun frowned slightly. Did Yi Guqin think that he could forge a heavenly tribulation divine weapon that was more powerful than the yin-yang dual swords? Nangong Juyun was not the only one who was confused. The other spectators were also confused. They did not even know if Yi Guqin's heavenly tribulation divine weapon would succeed, let alone be compared to Nangong Juyun's yin-yang dual swords. Everyone around the heavenly cauldron was in a heated discussion. However, these noises did not affect Yi Guqin. At that moment, he was fully focused on forging the heavenly tribulation divine weapon. Rumble! At a certain moment, the sword embryo began to form. As soon as it was formed, a terrifying sword qi gushed out, causing the air to emit a clanging sound. It's really something. Gu Beihan raised his eyebrows when he saw that. From the sword embryo, he could feel a chill that would make one's heart tremble. It was only the sword embryo, but it already had such power. How powerful would it be when it was fully formed? No. Impossible. Nangong Juyun's eyes narrowed. He would not believe that Yi Guqin could forge a heavenly tribulation divine weapon that was better than his until he saw Yi Guqin's heavenly tribulation divine weapon. The sword embryo is finally formed. Next is... Yi Guqin's eyes lit up. In the next moment, he did something that no one expected. Sword embryo out. Yi Guqin immediately took out the innate sword embryo in his dantian. The sword embryo that was entwined with chaotic energy broke through the air. It was the size of a palm and was sparkling like jade. It flickered with a chaotic sharpness, as if it could cut through the void. That's Yi Guqin's innate mystique, the innate sword embryo. Why did he summon his own sword embryo? Many people cried out in alarm, unable to understand. Could it be that he wants to? Gu Beihan seemed to have thought of something as his expression froze. If that was really the case, then Yi Guqin was plotting something big. What he wanted to forge was not just an ordinary divine weapon, but a weapon that he could perfectly control, and whose attributes were completely compatible with him. If one had to describe it, the divine weapons forged by ordinary blacksmiths were the common version. On the other hand, the divine weapon that Yi Guqin forged was a custom-made version that was exclusive to him. The custom version was obviously more difficult to forge than the general version. Go! Yi Guchen used his fingers as a sword. Following his guidance, the innate sword embryo merged into the sword embryo. What? What is Yi Guchen trying to do? Why did he merge his innate sword embryo into the rough sword embryo? Those onlookers who did not know what was going on all cried out in alarm. Innate mystique could be said to be the core skill of a prodigy. They did not expect Yi Guchen to merge his innate sword embryo into his divine weapon. Could it be that he wants to? Xiao Gongshu and Nangong Huajing's expressions froze at almost the same time. With their experience in forging, they naturally knew what Yi Guchen was trying to do. Impossible. Even I would find it extremely difficult to forge such a divine weapon, let alone Yi Guchen. Moreover, it's impossible for him to perfectly merge his innate sword embryo and the rough sword embryo, Xiao Gongshu said coldly. His words immediately caused the surrounding people to react. I see. Yi Guchen's scheme is so big. Can he really forge it? Didn't you hear Master Xiao Gongshu say that it's difficult to merge an innate sword embryo and a rough sword embryo? I'm afraid Yi Guchen is going to make a fool of himself. The uproar in the surroundings was like a tidal wave rising. It was really because Yi Guchen's actions were too shocking. No one had expected him to do this. Forge a divine weapon that belongs to oneself? Yi Guchen, are you kidding? Even some 8-star forging grandmasters have a pitifully low success rate. Nangong Juyun's face was cold when he found out. He did not think that Yi Guchen had the ability to forge such a divine weapon. Yi Guchen did not say a word. He ignored the clamor outside and began to merge his innate sword embryo into the rough sword embryo. At the moment of merging, the innate sword embryo and the rough sword embryo produced a strong repulsive force. The innate sword embryo was Yi Guchen's innate mystique. As for the sword's rough embryo, it was made of various sacred materials. Both of them were extremely powerful. When they merged, there would definitely be a repulsive force. Neither of them would submit to the other. Haha, as expected. Xiao Gongshu's lips curled up into a cold smile. With his experience, he naturally knew that Yi Guchen's success rate was close to zero. Yi Guchen is still too impulsive. Gu Beihan saw this and shook his head slightly. Even Gu Beihan himself could not guarantee that he would succeed in forging a divine weapon. Yi Guchen. Gu Xiangling's beautiful eyes were fixed on Yi Guchen. If Yi Guchen could really succeed today, he would have created another miracle. Clang, clang, clang in the void, sword chi intertwined. The innate sword embryo and the rough sword embryo resisted each other and could not merge. Yi Guchen's expression remained calm. In fact, he had already expected this to happen. Just when everyone thought that Yi Guchen's efforts would be in vain, Yi Guchen suddenly raised his hand, and the chaos divine flame surged out. Seeing this, Nangong Juyun's lips curled up into a cold smile. Using the chaos divine flame? Unfortunately, with your strength, even if you use the chaos divine flame, you will not succeed. Nangong Juyun was not the only one who thought this. Xiao Gongshu, Nangong Huajing, and the elders of the divine artifact sect all thought the same. The chaos divine flame was indeed powerful, but Yi Guchen's current strength was not enough to fully unleash its power. However, Yi Guchen's lips curled into a smile. His hair fluttered in the wind, and his eyes seemed to be burning with multicolored chaos divine flames. 10,000-year-old fire spirit, come out! Yi Guchen let out a long howl that seemed to shake the stars in the sky. At the same time, Yi Guchen activated the embryonic form of his world divine dwelling. It also contained the power of the chaos divine flame. It could be said that Yi Guchen was the only person who was qualified to completely refine and control the 10,000-year-old fire spirit. He was not afraid that the 10,000-year-old fire spirit would not listen to him. What kind of nonsense is Yi Guchen talking about? Everyone was stunned. Gu Beihan and the others were even more confused. If the 10,000-year-old fire spirit was so obedient, there would be no need to suppress it with the giant bronze tower. However, as soon as Yi Guchen finished speaking, the entire bronze pagoda shook violently. Then a second time. A third time. Finally, under everyone's shocked and dazed gazes, the giant bronze tower cracked and then started to collapse. An endless amount of primal chaos divine flame surged out, and a strange fire spirit that looked like a Qilin roared at the sky while engulfed in divine flames. Chapter 1365. The primal chaos divine fire roiled in the air. The 10,000-year-old fire spirit that looked like a Qilin broke out of the tower and appeared in front of everyone. Everyone was stunned. At this moment, everyone was dumbfounded. The expressions on their faces froze at the same time. The giant bronze tower had been passed down from the ancestors of the divine artifact sect to suppress the 10,000-year-old fire spirit. But now the 10,000-year-old fire spirit had destroyed it. Most importantly, the 10,000-year-old fire spirit seemed to have broken out of the tower because of Yi Guqin's summons. This was simply inconceivable and unbelievable. Gu Beihan opened his mouth slightly, but he was speechless and could not say anything. The 10,000-year-old fire spirit was the foundation of the divine artifact sect, but now, it had broken out of seclusion because of Yi Guqin. Yang Qi, Song Feichen, and the others were also stunned. Even Duan Tianfeng, Gu Xiangling and the rest, who were on Yi Guqin's side, were in a daze. Clearly, they had never expected this to happen. How is this possible? How can he control the 10,000-year-old fire spirit? Even Xiao Gongqing was shocked. If the 10,000-year-old fire spirit could be controlled so easily, he would have been tempted long ago. Nangong Huajing covered her mouth with her hand, shocked beyond words. As for Nangong Jiuyun, he seemed to have lost his soul. Yi Guqin had exceeded his expectations time and time again. He was almost numb to it. Everyone was shocked. At the same time, they were wondering what Yi Guqin's next move was. Yi Guqin raised his hand and beckoned. The 10,000-year-old fire spirit seemed to be driven by him. It rushed directly toward the innate sword embryo and the sword embryo. I understand now. Yi Guqin wants to use the 10,000-year-old fire spirit's power to fuse the innate sword embryo with the embryo. An elder of the divine artifact sect shouted. This kind of spending could not be said to be small. No, he was using the resources of the divine artifact sect to forge a sword for himself. Haha, Yi Guqin, you're really something, aren't you? Even my divine artifact sect has fallen into your trap? Gu Beihan shook his head and sighed. He finally understood why Yi Guqin was here to participate in the young sect master selection. It wasn't just to help Mo Tianfeng win the bet. He also wanted to obtain the identity of the young sect master to reduce the pressure on him. Now even the 10,000-year fire spirit was used by him to forge a sword for him. It could be said that Divine Tool sect had completely given Yi Guqin a gift. But he couldn't blame Yi Guqin. I finally know why even the Overlord class factions have to suffer in front of this kid. He's so meticulous. Duan Tianfeng, your standards are still as high as ever. Gu Beihan sighed and looked at Duan Tianfeng. Hee, this kid is always unexpected. I'm getting used to it. Mo Tianfeng laughed. Then, everyone's eyes gathered on Yi Guqin. Because as long as his results were out, the entire young sect master selection would be almost certain. Roar. The 10,000-year fire spirit's lifeline was in Yi Guqin's hands. Therefore, no matter how unwilling it was, it could only forge a sword for Yi Guqin. The 10,000-year fire spirit was a spiritual intelligence derived from the chaos divine fire. The energy it contained far surpassed Yi Guqin's. The violent chaos divine fire burned the innate sword embryo and the sword embryo. With the support of the 10,000-year fire spirit's energy, the two slowly merged together. With the innate sword embryo as the core, the sword embryo was wrapped around the outside. The innate sword embryo itself had the attributes of sharpness and indestructibility. It was even better than the best divine tool. This time, Nangong Juyin panicked. Finally, at some point, the innate sword embryo and the sword embryo completely merged together. In an instant, the sound of the sword resonated in the 9 heavens. Everyone seemed to hear the sound of the sword resonating in their ears. 10,000-year fire spirit, merge! Yi Guqin shouted coldly once again. After the fusion, a burst of light burst out from the sword. The 10,000-year fire spirit roared, but it was still absorbed into the sword embryo. Everyone was dumbfounded. Yi Guqin had sealed the 10,000-year fire spirit into the sword embryo? How could he do that? Even Nangong Juyin was dumbfounded. This kid. Gu Beihan was stunned. First Elder Yang Qi's eyes also popped out. Yi Guqin had sealed the 10,000-year fire spirit. the core of Divine Tool Sect, into his sword embryo? Everyone was shocked. As for Yi Guqin, his expression was focused and he was not affected at all. If he wanted to forge a sword embryo, he naturally had to be the best in every aspect. The 10,000-year fire spirit was extremely powerful. It could be sealed into the sword embryo as a trump card. As for angering Divine Tool Sect, Yi Guqin naturally had a way to ensure that Divine Tool Sect could still use the Chaos Divine Fire safely. Next, the most important step is to completely unleash the taboo forging technique. Yi Guqin's eyes flashed. He raised his hand and slapped his chest. He spat out a mouthful of his heart's blood, which splashed onto the sword embryo and sizzled. What is Yi Guqin doing? Is he harming himself? No, he's probably going to use the forbidden art. Everyone's attention was focused. Even Gu Beihan and the others temporarily put aside the matter of the 10,000-year fire spirit and watched closely. Not enough. Yi Guqin raised his eyebrows. He used some more heart's blood, but his face paled a lot. However, the sword embryo was covered in a layer of faint bloody light, as if it was resonating with Yi Guqin. Essence blood alone isn't enough. Refining a sword embryo with a human soul and dual cultivating sword embryo, and life requires a soul as well. Yi Guqin gritted his teeth and the sea of consciousness in his mind began to work furiously. Then, Yi Guqin split a part of his sea of consciousness origin. The last time he split his sea of consciousness origin was to refine his clone, Duguqioma. To a certain extent, this sword embryo could be considered another clone of his. The pain of splitting one sea of consciousness origin was more painful than being torn apart by 5 horses or being cut into pieces. Even with Yi Guqin's temperament, his lips turned pale and his body trembled slightly. Splitting one sea of consciousness origin. Heavens, he's crazy. Seeing Yi Guqin's crazy scene, everyone felt their hair stand on end. Now they knew why this art of forging was called a forbidden art. It was not something that ordinary blacksmiths could perform. If one was not careful and made a mistake, their sea of consciousness might collapse and their vitality would perish. The separated sea of consciousness origin was also integrated into the sword embryo. In an instant, Yi Guqin felt as if there was a soul link between him and the sword embryo. At this point, all the steps were finally completed. Next, there was only one last step, and that was the heavenly tribulation baptism. Rumble. Dark clouds loomed over the horizon, as if the end of the world had arrived and was about to destroy everything. Why do I feel like this heavenly tribulation is much bigger than Nangong Juyun's? Looking at the rolling dark clouds, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. At this moment, streaks of rainbow-colored lightning rolled in the clouds, roaring like angry dragons. Is that the rainbow lightning tribulation? Gu Beihan's heart trembled violently. As the sect master of Divine Artifact Sect, he could not help but lose his composure. Chapter 1366. As everyone knew, the reason why divine weapons of tribulation were called divine weapons of tribulation was because they were extremely powerful and could trigger the power of tribulation. As long as they could survive the tribulation, the quality of the weapon would change. The thunder tribulation that an ordinary heavenly tribulation weapon would attract was just an ordinary one. However, there were also some rare godly weapons or special godly weapons whose quality was too heaven-defying. The lightning tribulation they attracted was not ordinary lightning tribulation, but special lightning tribulation. Generally speaking, the more colors there were in the tribulation lightning, the more powerful the weapon was. However, Yi Guqin's weapon had triggered the 7-colored tribulation lightning. It was unbelievable. Even Gu Beihan's eyes widened in disbelief. What kind of weapon did Yi Guqin forge? The weapon I forged only triggered the 5-colored tribulation lightning at most, but this guy triggered the 7-colored tribulation lightning. Gu Beihan was shocked. He was not the only one. All the elders and disciples of the artifact sect were stunned. They could not believe what they were seeing. Who would have thought that a 6-star blacksmith could forge a weapon that triggered the 7-colored tribulation lightning? 7-colored tribulation lightning. Haha, as expected of little Yi. Duan Tianfeng could not stop laughing. It could be said that as long as Yi Guchen's magical weapon could withstand the baptism of the seven-colored thunder tribulation, the outcome of the young master selection was almost certain. Young Master Yi can create miracles no matter where he is. It's amazing. Gu Xiangling's heart was also pounding. Yi Guchen was too outstanding. He was so outstanding that even her heart was moved. Seven-colored tribulation lightning. This guy triggered the seven-colored tribulation lightning. How is that possible? Xiao Gongshu's face was extremely pale. He thought that Nangong Juyin would be able to forge the yin-yang dual swords. However, the seven-colored tribulation lightning was like a slap to his face. Xiao Gongshu, you don't have to do this. Maybe Yi Guchen's weapon can't survive the seven-colored tribulation lightning. Nangong Huajing comforted him. However, to be honest, even she was worried. As for Nangong Juyin himself, his face was tense as he looked at the seven-colored tribulation lightning descending from the sky. The pride in his heart and his pride in the path of smithing were completely shattered by the seven-colored thunderbolt disaster. He dared not believe that Yi Guchen was more outstanding than him in smithing art. Impossible, it can't be. Your divine weapon can't withstand the baptism of the seven-colored lightning tribulation. Nangong Juyin could no longer maintain the image of a noble young master. His eyes were bloodshot, and his entire body was trembling. Everyone's gaze fell upon the divine weapon that Yi Guchen had forged. Yi Guchen stood in the air with his hands clasped behind his back. He raised his head and looked at the sky, watching the seven-colored lightning tribulation crash onto the divine weapon. Scorching lightning exploded in the void, as if it was going to blind everyone's eyes. Yi Guchen's black hair fluttered in the wind. His expression was calm, and there was a hint of confidence on his face. He knew that the divine weapon he forged would not disappoint him. As expected, an endless amount of sword chi burst out in the void, shaking the surroundings. Even the seven-colored thunderbolt disaster looked like it was about to be shaken off. Moreover, Yi Guchen had fused the heavenly tribulation blue gold into the divine weapon. This kind of sacred material could greatly increase the divine weapon's ability to withstand the baptism of the lightning tribulation. Therefore, although the seven-colored thunderbolt disaster looked terrifying, it could not destroy the divine weapon that Yi Guchen had forged. Boom, boom, boom. Dark clouds rolled, and lightning roared. It was as if the heavens did not want such a heaven-defying divine weapon to appear in the world. So it sent down a tribulation. However, no matter how the seven-colored thunderbolt disaster struck, it could not destroy the divine weapon. Instead, it tempered the divine weapon even more. The lightning tribulation continued for 3 days and 3 nights. In the end, the seven-colored thunderbolt disaster finally dispersed unwillingly. In the sky, a bright and dazzling sword shone with a shocking sword light. The sword was 5 feet long, and the body of the sword was dazzling. It was surrounded by the chaotic aura that belonged to the innate sword embryo. At the same time, the colorful chaotic divine flame rose from the blade of the sword. The spiritual chi in the surroundings automatically flowed into the sword. When they saw the sword, everyone's eyes were filled with amazement. It was the first time they had seen a divine weapon that could cultivate on its own and absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. 100 calamity divine weapon. This sword has withstood hundreds of lightning tribulations and has transformed into 100 calamity divine weapon, a blacksmith said after taking a deep breath. In these 3 days and 3 nights, the sword had withstood hundreds of lightning tribulations, so it was 100 calamity divine weapon. In the future, when Yi Guchen found other materials and fused them into the sword, its quality would be improved. When Yi Guchen saw the divine weapon, his heart stirred. As if it had been summoned, the sword broke through the air and flew toward him. It was so fast that it seemed to have traveled through the void. That was the ability given by the Void Mother Gold. Yi Guchen raised his hand, and the sword fell into his hand. In an instant, Yi Guchen felt as if his blood was connected to the sword. This sword would accompany him on his path of swordsmanship. Yi Guchen extended a finger. With a poof, a wisp of chaotic divine fire rose. Then, Yi Guchen's finger landed on the end of the sword near the hilt and wrote 2 words. Seeking defeat. From now on, this sword's name is Seeking Defeat. With a sword in hand, I only seek defeat. As soon as Yi Guchen finished speaking, the seeking defeat sword seemed to have been summoned. The sword vibrated and countless chaotic sword rays burst out, piercing through the void. Yi Guchen felt a sense of joy. It was a sense of joy that came from the sword of death-seeking. This was a sword with spirituality. What a powerful spirituality. Will this sword nurture a sword spirit in the future? If that's the case, won't it reach the level of a famed ancient sword? Some elders of the divine artifact sect were stunned. With the seeking defeat sword in hand, Yi Guchen suddenly had a heroic aura that seemed to be able to cut through the heavens. I want this seeking defeat sword to be the sharpest and strongest sword in the world. Cut through the heavens and earth, cut through the sun, moon, and stars. Yi Guchen's black hair danced in the wind as he stood in the sky with the sword in his hand. Everyone's hearts were filled with shock. Yi Guchen was very ambitious. His expectations for the seeking defeat sword were not just limited to being 100 calamity divine weapon. Yi Guchen looked at Nangong Juyun, whose face was extremely pale. Nangong Juyun, do you still want to compete? Yi Guchen's words made Nangong Juyun's pale face even paler. He clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Compete? How should they compete? Now anyone with a discerning eye could see that Yi Guchen's sword of begging for defeat was definitely better than his sword of yin and yang. The result of the young sect master selection had been completely decided. No, I won't accept this. Nangong Juyun stared at Yi Guchen. All right, I'll make you accept this. Seeing this, Yi Guchen said coldly and swung his hand. The seeking defeat sword slashed at the yin-yang dual swords with a monstrous chaotic sword ray. Clang! The sound of metal clashing reverberated between heaven and earth. Chapter 1367. Sparks flew as sword radiance filled the sky. Yi Guchen did not hesitate at all. He immediately took out the sword of defeat and clashed with Nangong Juyun's yin-yang dual swords. This was the simplest and most direct way to test the quality of a divine weapon. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the yin-yang dual swords were sent flying by the sword of defeat. A huge crack appeared on the body of the sword. One could imagine that the sword of defeat could break the yin-yang dual swords if they clashed 2 more times. The quality of the divine weapon was obvious. This. Nangong Juyun felt as if a fishbone was stuck in his throat, and he could not utter a single word. Are you satisfied now? Yi Guchen said indifferently. Nangong Juyun's face turned purple as he looked at the yin-yang dual swords that were covered in cracks. His body trembled. He had lost. Nangong Juyun, who was said to be invincible in the art of forging, had lost in the end. Even his Dao heart had started to crack because of this cruel reality. As one of the 10 great young masters and born in a top overlord family, Nangong Juyun's life had always been smooth sailing. This was the first time he had suffered such a crushing defeat. How could this be? Nangong Huajing's face turned pale. Meanwhile, Xiao Gongshu's face was so gloomy that it could drip water. Their painstaking plan had been ruined because of Yi Guchen's appearance. This was not just a failure. It was also related to whether Xiao Gongshu could control divine weapon sect. However, all their plans had been ruined because of Yi Guchen. Gu Beihan did not know what to feel when he saw this result. He was relieved that Nangong Juyun did not win the position of young sect master. However, Yi Guchen would be troublesome if he became the young sect master. Not to mention that he had taken away the 10,000-year fire spirit of divine weapon sect. Although Yi Guchen's performance had surprised Gu Beihan, it could not make up for the trouble that Yi Guchen had brought. Gu Beihan sighed in his heart, but he still had to announce the result. He took a step forward and said, I'm sure everyone is well aware of the results of the young sect master selection. So this sect master announces. Just as Gu Beihan was about to announce the result, Xiao Gongshu stepped forward and said, Sect master, please wait. I feel that there is still room for discussion in this competition. Gu Beihan frowned slightly. Duan Tianfeng also raised his eyebrows. He had also expected that Master Xiao would not give up so easily after losing. What do you mean by that? Gu Beihan asked in a low voice. Xiao Gongshu's expression was indifferent as he asked. When this fellow was smithing, he integrated his innate divine ability, the innate sword embryo. I wonder if this is in accordance with the rules. Furthermore, he sealed the 10,000-year-old fire spirit of our sect into his own sword without permission. This alone is a great crime, enough to strip him of all qualifications. Master Zhao's words caused the surroundings to fall silent for a moment. The so-called innate sword embryo was Yi Guqin's divine ability in the first place. He could use it if he wanted to. Xiao Gongshu was just twisting words and twisting logic. As for the 10,000-year-old fire spirit, Yi Guqin was indeed responsible for it, but this would have to be discussed later. Moreover, if Yi Guqin became the young sect master of Divine Artifact Sect, the 10,000-year-old fire spirit would not be considered an outsider. In short, if Master Xiao lost, he was just being picky and didn't want to admit the final result. Master Xiao, can you be any more shameless? Duan Tianfeng was so angry that he stomped his foot. Even Nangong Huajing's beautiful face looked a little unnatural. Master Zhao's method was indeed disgraceful. However, Master Xiao did not care. He would never let Yi Guqin become the young sect master. Master Xiao, aren't you being a little too forceful? The innate sword embryo is Yi Guqin's. As for the 10,000-year-old fire spirit, it's not impossible to discuss it later. Gu Beihan frowned. I'm just speaking the truth, Master Xiao said with a cold expression. Yi Guqin looked at Master Xiao and narrowed his eyes. Just as he was about to speak, a sigh came from an elder of Divine Artifact Sect. Everyone looked over and was slightly surprised. It's the 9th elder of Divine Artifact Sect. What does he mean? The 9th elder of Divine Artifact Sect was a tall and thin middle-aged man. He looked a little hesitant, but after a long while he sighed and said, Master Xiao, it's about time. What can you do even if you admit defeat? Gu Beihan and the other's eyes flashed at the 9th elder's words. What did he mean? Master Xiao was expressionless, but a cold glint flashed through his eyes. The 9th elder shook his head and sighed when he saw Master Zhao's icy expression. Back then, you defeated senior brother Duan Tianfeng, because of some tricks. Are you going to do it again? As soon as these words came out, the whole place fell into a dead silence. What did the 9th elder mean by that? Duke Zhao's complexion turned ashen at a speed visible to the naked eye. He said coldly, 9th elder, you're speaking nonsense again. I'm not. The 9th elder exhaled deeply. He suddenly turned to Duan Tianfeng and clasped his hands. My apologies, senior brother Duan Tianfeng. I feel guilty for what happened back then. What do you mean? Duan Tianfeng was a little confused and didn't know how to react. In truth, Master Xiao was able to defeat you back then because he had me secretly tamper with your forging materials. That's why you lost to him, the 9th elder said apologetically. Everyone in the cauldron froze at the 9th elder's words. Gu Beihan and the others were even more shocked. So that's how it is. Duan Tianfeng's eyes lost focus and his voice trembled. He hadn't lost. Master Xiao had played tricks. My apologies, senior brother Duan. I only spoke now because I couldn't stand Master Xiao trying to use tricks to influence the selection of the junior sect master, the 9th elder said. What nonsense are you talking about? Master Zhao's face was as cold as the frost in September. His expression was unprecedentedly ugly, and he could no longer maintain his calm. What? Darling Xiao, is what he said true? Nangong Huajing widened her beautiful eyes in disbelief. She had always thought that Master Xiao had defeated Duan Tianfeng fair and square. That was why she fell in love with him. Now the 9th elder was saying that Master Xiao had defeated Duan Tianfeng by using tricks. This made Nangong Huajing dizzy. She couldn't believe it. No, it's not like that. Master Xiao gritted his teeth. He had never thought that the 9th elder would reveal the truth to the public at this moment. Master Xiao, stop and admit your defeat, the 9th elder said. No, you're slandering me. I didn't. Master Zhao's eyes began to turn red. He looked at Nangong Huajing and said, Huajing, you believe me, right? Nangong Huajing was in a daze. Her face was pale. She had never seen the shrewd Master Xiao lose his composure like that. The result was obvious. I even said that it was senior brother Duan's fate to lose to you. Now the person who was fooled by fate is me. Nangong Huajing smiled with tears in her eyes. The most painful thing in the world was to entrust one's life to the wrong person. Chapter 1368. Back then, Nangong Huajing and Duan Tianfeng had been the closest of brothers and sisters. But Xiao Gongshu had interfered. In the end, the two of them had used the art of forging as a bet to determine the winner. The winner would remain in the divine artifacts sect. The loser would lose everything and wander the world. In the end, Duan Tianfeng had lost. Nangong Huajing had thought that Xiao Gongshu had defeated Duan Tianfeng fair and square. But now, after so many years, someone had told her that Xiao Gongshu had defeated Duan Tianfeng through underhanded means. Nangong Huajing couldn't accept this. She seemed to have lost her soul. Xiao Gongshu's hands were trembling. He looked around and found that the elders of the Divine Artifacts sect were looking at him with indifference. Eunuch Zhao's expression was simply a confession without being pressed. Who would have thought that the great Beiyin artifact sovereign Xiao Gongshu would use such a method to defeat Duan Tianfeng? That's right. And here I thought that Xiao Gongshu had defeated Duan Tianfeng fair and square. What right does he have to have such a status? Heh. I think that Xiao Gongshu's reputation will be ruined after this. After all, this method is a little underhanded. Some of the spectators whispered in hushed voices. Now that Xiao Gongshu was present, they didn't dare to say anything openly, but their eyes were full of disdain. One could imagine how bad Xiao Gongshu's reputation would be in the South Horizon region after today. Yu. Xiao Gongshu's face was ashen when he sensed the disdainful gazes. He glared at Yi Guchen. If Yi Guchen hadn't interfered, Nangong Juyin wouldn't have lost. His past wouldn't have been exposed like this. But now, Xiao Gongshu couldn't do anything to Yi Guchen. He flung his sleeves and turned to leave, but his back was a little hurried and disheveled. Nangong Huajing seemed to be in a daze. Her beautiful eyes turned to Duan Tianfeng, speechless for a moment. It was Xiao Gongshu who'd been deceiving her from the beginning. And the old man in front of her was the one who'd treated her sincerely. Even after so many years, Duan Tianfeng still hadn't forgotten her. As for Nangong Huajing herself, she had been mocking and ridiculing Duan Tianfeng, and even advised him to live in seclusion. At this moment, Nangong Huajing's heart was filled with regret. A deep sense of regret spread through her heart. Senior brother Duan Nangong Huajing's beautiful eyes reddened as she hesitated to speak. Duan Tianfeng wore a complicated look on his face. Did he love Nangong Huajing? Perhaps she used to love him very much. But now, when he saw the mature Nangong Huajing, he suddenly felt a little unfamiliar. Many beautiful things only belong to the past. Huajing, you don't have to say anything. I won't blame you. Let bygones be bygones. Duan Tianfeng shook his head. When Nangong Huajing heard this, her beautiful face instantly turned pale. She could hear a sense of distance in his words. It was impossible for Mo Tianfeng to be deeply in love with her. When she thought up to here, Nangong Huajing's delicate figure trembled slightly, and then she turned around and left in a hurry. She was afraid that if she was a step too late, she would not be able to stop her tears from falling. Gu Beihan and the others from Divine Artifacts sect sighed inwardly as they watched Xiao Gongshu and Nangong Huajing leave. Who would have thought that the emotional entanglement between the three of them would end in such a way? Duan Tianfeng was not with Nangong Huajing. After Nangong Huajing learned of Xiao Gongshu's actions, it was clear that he would not be able to peacefully interact with Nangong Huajing. Perhaps this was fate playing tricks on people. Yi Guchen also sighed softly when he saw this. However, this was Duan Tianfeng's matter, so Yi Guchen would not comment on it. How could it be like this? Master. Nangong Juiyun's face was also pale. Even he did not know that his respected master had once done such a despicable thing. Nangong Juiyun's personality was not that of the righteous and upright type, and he was capable of all sorts of schemes. However, he had his own pride in the path of forging. No matter what, he would not use such a despicable method to obtain victory. At this moment, Nangong Juiyun's Dao heart suffered a huge blow. However, in the blink of an eye, he fixed his gaze on Yi Guchen. Other things aside, the position of junior sect master had been lost to him because of Yi Guchen. Nangong Juiyun's hatred for Yi Guchen was obvious. Yi Guchen, I will remember this. See you at Sky Burial Island. Nangong Jueyin put away the cracked yin-yang dual swords and turned to leave with a cold expression. His reputation as the divine weapon young master had been completely tarnished today. The elders of Divine Artifact Sect finally breathed a sigh of relief after Nangong Jueyin left. In the end, Divine Artifact Sect was not controlled by Xiao Gongshu and the Nangong family. Haha, Duan Tianfeng, congratulations. Yang Qi and the other elders cupped their hands at Duan Tianfeng. He had won the bet, which meant that his hands and identity would be restored. In truth, the bet was no longer valid the moment the truth was revealed. After all, Xiao Gongshu's victory was obtained through dirty and despicable means. Duan Tianfeng forced a smile, but he couldn't bring himself to be happy. After all, he was completely cut off from the past. Senior Duan Tianfeng, one must look forward. The future is promising. Yi Guqin stepped forward with a faint smile. Haha, you're right. It's time to let go. Duan Tianfeng laughed. However, Gu Beihan looked at Yi Guqin and frowned. Yi Guqin, you may have won the Junior Sect Master selection, but you took away Divine Artifact Sect's cornerstone treasure. How should we settle this? It wasn't that Gu Beihan was petty, but that the chaos divine flame of the 10,000-year-old fire spirit was too important to Divine Artifact Sect. Father, can you not be so harsh with your words? Gu Xiangling walked out with light steps and said reproachfully. This. Gu Beihan's expression froze. Was his daughter siding with an outsider? Seeing this, Yi Guqin shook his head and smiled. Don't worry, Sect Master Gu. I naturally wouldn't do such a thing. I have a way to allow Divine Artifact Sect to safely use the Chaos Divine Flame. Oh. Gu Beihan, Yang Qi, and the others raised their eyebrows at Yi Guqin's words. Yi Guqin had sealed the 10,000-year-old fire spirit into the sword of begging for defeat. What could he do? Yi Guqin raised his hand, and colorful Chaos Divine Flame immediately rose from the surface of the sword of begging for defeat. Then a flame seed separated from the flame seed. This is the flame seed of the Chaos Divine Flame. It can also release Chaos Divine Flame without any hidden dangers, Yi Guqin said. His words caused the eyes of many Divine Artifact Sect disciples to light up. They were most worried about being harmed by the Chaos Divine Flame when they came to the Sky Cauldron forging. Song Feichen, for example, was a very good example. But now, the 10,000-year-old fire spirit had been sealed by Yi Guqin, and they could still safely use the Chaos Divine Flame. Not only was this not a loss for Divine Artifact Sect, but it was also a benefit. Chapter 1369. When Gu Beihan saw this, he was speechless. Losing the 10,000-year-old fire spirit seemed like a huge loss. But in reality, they couldn't subdue the 10,000-year-old fire spirit even if they had it. They could only use the bronze tower to suppress it. And now, the bronze tower had been destroyed. Even if Yi Guqin returned the 10,000-year-old fire spirit to the sect, they couldn't find a good way to contain it. The flame of chaos, on the other hand, had no such worries. It wasn't as violent as the 10,000-year-old fire spirit that would hurt people at the slightest provocation. Therefore, to a certain extent, Yi Guqin had helped Divine Artifact Sect solve a thorny problem. Father, Sir Yi has already shown his sincerity. Besides, we only need the flame of chaos. Gu Xiangling continued to assist. Gu Beihan was speechless. Was this daughter really his biological daughter? Fine. You can keep the flame of chaos then. Consider it a bargain for you, kid, said Gu Beihan. Aside from the flame of primal chaos, he was also doing this out of respect for forging Tianfeng. Duan Tianfeng was a great southern refiner and an 8-star grandmaster artificer. Now that he could recover his hands, he'd be a big shot again. Divine Artifact Sect couldn't trust Mr. Xiao anymore, so they had an excuse to expel him. They needed someone to replace him. Duan Tianfeng was undoubtedly someone the sect had to rope in. Besides, he was a member of the sect to begin with. Thinking of this, Gu Beihan said to Duan Tianfeng, Duan Tianfeng, I'll find someone to heal your hands. When the time comes, you can stay in Divine Artifact Sect and be an elder with peace of mind. Duan Tianfeng didn't immediately agree when he heard this. He was a member of Divine Artifacts sect in the first place and had feelings for the sect. He would naturally stay in the sect in the future. But before that, Duan Tianfeng had one more thing to do. That's not impossible, but I hope the sect master can agree to one thing, said Duan Tianfeng. What is it? Asked Gu Beihan. Since Yi Guqin has won the final victory, shouldn't the position of junior sect master be decided? Asked Duan Tianfeng. He was fighting for an identity for Yi Guqin. Although his identity as the young sect master of Divine Artifacts sect wasn't enough to intimidate the likes of Starry Universe Sword Pavilion, Heavenly God Sword Sect, Dongfang Family, and Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion. But at the very least, they would have some misgivings. After all, Divine Artifacts sect's influence wasn't small. Furthermore, these overlords would often purchase materials from the Divine Artifacts sect. This identity would cause the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion and the other powers to hesitate before making a move on him. Gu Beihan was at a loss for words. To be honest, if he could, he wanted to just let this matter slide. After all, as the sect master of the Divine Artifacts sect, he didn't want to get into trouble with Yi Guqin. Although the overlord forces weren't crazy enough to eliminate Divine Artifacts sect because of this, they would still be in trouble. This matter. Gu Beihan was thinking of how to broach the subject. However, Gu Xiangling said, "Father, the final results of the young sect master selection are out. Is there still a need to consider? Moreover, everyone has seen young Master Ye's performance. It can be said that no one is more suitable than him to be the young sect master." Hearing Gu Xiangling's words, the other Divine Artifact sect disciples echoed her sentiments. After all, Yi Guqin had given them the benefit of being able to use the Chaos Divine Flame safely. Yi Guqin's lips curled into a smile when he saw this. He'd done a good job building a good relationship with Gu Xiangling. At this moment, the Great Elder, Yang Qi, stepped forward and said, "Sect leader, I think Yi Guqin is qualified to be the young sect leader. Do you think those overlords would go against us just because of Yi Guqin?" "Do you think so as well?" Gu Beihan sighed softly. To be honest, even he was shocked by Yi Guqin's talent in smithing. That sort of courting defeat definitely had a chance to evolve into an even stronger weapon in the future. However, she still had her misgivings. Yi Guqin's expression was indifferent when he saw this. He didn't ask Gu Beihan to give him the position of young sect master. Instead, he cupped his hands and said, "I've made things difficult for you, sect master. My main goal is to help Senior Tianfeng, not the position of young sect master. Since you've made things difficult for me, I'll take my leave." With that, Yi Guqin prepared to leave. "Sir Yi, please don't." Gu Xiangling's expression changed slightly. Gu Beihan's heart skipped a beat when he saw Yi Guqin's departing figure. A strange feeling suddenly welled up in his heart. It would be a great loss for Divine Artifacts sect if they gave up on Yi Guqin. Gu Beihan didn't know why he had such a thought. However, he still blurted out, "Wait." Yi Guqin paused and turned to look at Gu Beihan. "Since you've won the position of young sect master, the position is naturally yours. Our Divine Artifacts sect's reputation is unshakable." Many people were moved by Gu Beihan's words. They hadn't expected Divine Artifacts sect to be so bold as to make Yi Guqin their junior sect master. This was practically inviting trouble onto themselves. Even Yi Guqin himself raised his eyebrows. He was a little surprised. He did not expect Gu Beihan to have such courage. He wasn't playing hard to get, but he really did want to leave. "Then I thank you, sect master Gu." Yi Guqin nodded. Since Gu Beihan was willing to make him Divine Artifacts sect's junior sect master, Yi Guqin was naturally happy to do so. Having another identity was better than having none at all. Yi Guqin breathed a sigh of relief after everything was settled. The matter of the forging Sky Edge was finally resolved. The Divine Artifacts sect disciples didn't object to this decision in the slightest. After all, they'd seen Yi Guqin's performance. He was indeed the best candidate to become junior sect master. As for Song Feichen, he'd long since given up hope. He knew that he couldn't compare to Yi Guqin anymore. Suddenly, the Divine Condor rolled his eyes and called out, "Eh? Why does Condor Grandpa seem to have heard that the person who becomes junior sect master can marry Miss Gu Xiangling?" The crowd quieted down at his words. The group of people had strange expressions on their faces. Gu Xiangling's face flushed red, like the rosy clouds reflecting the snow. Her beauty was unparalleled. Gu Beihan was taken aback. So Yi Guqin hadn't just become junior sect master, he'd also taken away the 10,000-year-old fire spirit. Now he was even going to kidnap his daughter? Gu Beihan glanced at Gu Xiangling out of the corner of his eye, and saw that her head was lowered shyly. She didn't seem to reject the idea. Gu Beihan was a little speechless. When Gu Xiangling had learned that she could marry Nangong Jiuyun, she'd rather die than submit. But now, it was Yi Guqin's turn to have such an attitude. This was different from person to person, and there was a difference in treatment. Chapter 1370. However, Gu Beihan had already made up his mind about this matter. He could not allow Gu Xiangling and Yi Guqin to have a marriage alliance. At least not now, because Sky Burial Island would be open soon. Everyone in the South Sky region knew about the trouble Yi Guqin had caused. Who knew if Gu Xiangling would become a widow in a few months, if they were to have a marriage alliance now? Moreover, even if this matter did not happen, Gu Beihan would not agree to it, because it was too dangerous to be Yi Guqin's wife. He could not allow his daughter to be in danger. Just as Gu Beihan was about to find an excuse to decline, Yi Guqin spoke first. Brother Condor, don't joke around. Miss Gu's life should be in her own hands. How can you speak so casually? Yi Guqin shook his head. He naturally did not have any thoughts about Gu Xiangling. Right now he only had one goal, and that was revenge. Other than that, love and romance had nothing to do with him. No, I didn't. Gu Xiangling wanted to say something, but stopped. She was actually slightly anxious. She did not open her mouth to object. Seeing this, the divine condor covered his eyes with his little wings. He shook his head and sighed. You're hopeless. You're really a man of steel. Gu Beihan smiled faintly. He thought to himself that Yi Guqin was still sensible. He nodded slightly and said, That's good. After all, they're both young people. There's no need to rush such a big matter in life. Who knows, there might be another chance in the future. However, Gu Xiangling felt a faint sense of disappointment in her heart. She asked herself honestly, if she really allowed Yi Guqin to have a marriage alliance with her, she would not reject it. Instead, she would feel a trace of joy and anticipation. After all, who would not want their husband to be an indomitable man? Yi Guqin could be considered to be a perfect match for the image of a hero in her heart. Unfortunately, Gu Xiangling did not see a trace of interest in Yi Guqin's eyes. At most, they looked at each other like friends. Very well. Yi Guqin, in a few days, Divine Weapon Sect will hold a ceremony for you as the Junior Sect Master. At that time, you will officially become the Junior Sect Master of Divine Weapon Sect. Not just anyone can provoke you, Gu Beihan said. However, what he meant was that the Starry Sword Pavilion and the other overlord forces were not nobodies. Thank you, Sect Leader Gu. Yi Guqin cupped his fists. How could he not know what Gu's mind? However, Yi Guqin didn't think that his status as a young sect master was enough to make Celestial Artifact Sect and Starry Sword Pavilion go against each other. That was unrealistic. It would be enough as long as he could make those factions feel a little apprehensive. The Junior Sect Master selection came to an end in such an unexpected manner. After that, Yi Guqin went into seclusion to adjust his breath. He placed the sword of begging defeat in his dantian to nourish it. It could be said that this sword was already a part of his life. Moreover, Yi Guqin knew that the 100 Calamity Divine Weapon was far from the end of the sword of begging defeat. This was a sword that could cultivate and grow on its own. Yi Guqin had long made up his mind. No matter what price he had to pay, he had to nurture the sword of defeat into an existence comparable to the famed ancient swords. At that moment, the sword of death-seeking was in Yi Guqin's dantian. It had shrunk to the size of a connate sword embryo. It was constantly absorbing the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, and was growing with every passing second. Yi Guqin was also very curious about how powerful this sword would be in the future. In the art of swordsmithing, there is a saying of hiding the sword. Hiding the sword in the body. It is fine if it does not come out, but once it comes out, It will definitely take the enemy's head. Yi Guchen's eyes flashed. He had already decided to nurture the sword of courting defeat in his dantian. For normal battles, he would use the 9-dragon thunder prison. When he really needed to use his full strength, he would directly use the sword of courting defeat. The power of this sword strike was earth-shattering, because it was the energy that had been accumulated for a long time. When it was released all at once, it was equivalent to an explosion of energy after accumulation. Its power was naturally different from ordinary sword moves. Another trump card. Yi Guchen murmured. This meant that he was one step closer to killing Di Haoyan with his own hands. After such a long delay in Heavenly Craftsmanship City, Burial Island is about to open. Yi Guchen took a deep breath. The real decisive battle was about to come a few days later. The artifacts sect was decorated with lanterns and streamers. A grand banquet was held for Yi Guchen's ascension to the position of junior sect master. It was believed that in a few days, the news that Yi Guchen had become the junior sect master of the Artifacts sect would spread from Heavenly Craftsmanship City to the entire South Horizon region. By then, countless people would be amazed by Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen had never liked this kind of banquet. After casually dealing with the guests, he went to a secluded courtyard to rest alone. A beautiful girl was leaning against a willow tree. She seemed to be in a daze, thinking about something. Suddenly, she saw Yi Guchen. Young Master Yi. Miss Gu. Yi Guchen smiled. This girl was Gu Xiangling. She was like a girl who had walked out of a painting. She was elegant and refined. Her face was like a painting. Yi Guchen had seen many girls, but it was rare to see a girl with such an outstanding temperament like Gu Xiangling. It seems that young Master Yi is also a person who likes peace and quiet. Gu Xiangling smiled. Yes. Yi Guchen nodded slightly. He didn't know what to say. Xiangling still has to thank young Master Yi. Otherwise, the current me would very likely be in deep trouble, said Gu Xiangling. Actually, I was just doing it for myself. Yi Guchen said. Young Master Yi, are you leaving? Gu Xiangling suddenly asked. That's right. It's close to the opening of Sky Burial Island. I have to make preparations first. Yi Guchen said. Can we meet again in the future? Gu Xiangling suddenly said. She didn't dare to look directly at Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen was stunned. However, he wasn't a fool. Although he was a little stubborn, how could he not understand Gu Xiangling's thoughts? However, sometimes it was best not to say it out loud. Of course. I'm the young sect master of Divine Artifact sect. We'll meet again in the future. Yi Guchen shook his head and smiled. Gu Xiangling blushed. She wanted to say something but couldn't. She also vaguely felt that someone had already occupied a place in Yi Guchen's heart. The two of them were silent. On the other side, Nangong Huajing was preparing to return to the Nangong family with Nangong Jueyun. The plan this time was a complete failure. Nangong Huajing felt empty in her heart. She had already decided to break up with Xiao Gongshu. Nangong Jueyun, on the other hand, was like a frosted eggplant. He no longer had his usual strategizing. His eyes were cold and filled with unwillingness. Sky Burial Island, Yi Guchen. This matter isn't over yet. Nangong Jueyun muttered to himself. In a spacious hall, Xiao Gongshu's eyes were bloodshot, and he looked like a gloomy beast. Yi Guchen, it's all because of him. Xiao Gongshu took a deep breath. Then he took out a pitch-black jade slip and crushed it. In less than 15 minutes. A slightly aged cackle could be heard. Xiao Gongshu, you still used this favor in the end. Chapter 1371. As the voice rang out, a skinny old man covered in a black cloak suddenly appeared in the hall like a ghost. Xiao Gongshu's expression did not change when he saw this. He said indifferently, "The Blood Shadow Pavilion really is unpredictable. You guys are everywhere." Haha, of course. After all, we're an assassin organization. The black-robed old man snickered. The Blood Shadow Pavilion was a powerful assassin organization in the South Horizon region. Although it was not an overlord-level organization, it was still extremely powerful. In reality, there were many other overlord-level organizations in the South Horizon region apart from the 3 sects, 4 pavilions and 5 clans. There were also many other organizations with extremely powerful sections. For example, the Artifacts Sect and the Blood Shadow Pavilion. Xiao Gongshu took a deep breath and said, "Back then, I secretly forged a god weapon for the Blood Shadow Pavilion. You owe me a favor. Now you have a chance to pay me back." The black-robed old man chuckled like a crow when he heard that. "Let me think. Don't tell me you want us to assassinate Yi Guqin?" Xiao Gongshu snorted coldly when he heard that. "Since you understand, I don't need to say anything more." However, the black-robed old man became slightly troubled. "Well, I'm afraid it'll be a little troublesome." What do you mean?" Xiao Gongshu's eyes immediately sharpened. The only thought in his mind was to get rid of Yi Guqin. This was because Yi Guqin had single-handedly ruined his entire plan. However, Xiao Gongshu clearly could not do it himself. It just so happened that the Blood Shadow Pavilion owed him a favor, so he could use it now. However, the person in charge of the Blood Shadow Pavilion was actually beating around the bush and saying something like that. Xiao Gongshu's face darkened even more. The black-robed old man gently smiled when he saw this. "Master Xiao, don't worry. You know that killing Yi Guqin is nothing, but there are too many implications. He was originally Jian Kuei from the Sword Dynasty. Now, the Sword Dynasty has become a saint ruler with the leader of the Sword Alliance, Ao Shenzhou, becoming a peak organization only second to the overlord-level organizations. And that Yu Kuan from the Holy Emperor realm seems to be related to Yi Guqin as well. Not to mention that Yi Guqin is now the junior sect master of Divine Artifacts Sect. That's quite a high status. Think about it. If our Blood Shadow Pavilion kills Yi Guqin, how much trouble will it cause?" The black-robed elder's words caused Xiao Gongshu's already gloomy face to sink even further. However, he couldn't refute it because it was indeed the truth. Yi Guqin was no longer the loner he had been in the infinite plains. The force behind him could not be underestimated. However, Xiao Gongshu still noticed that the black-robed old man's eyes flashed with a dark light. He came to a sudden realization and said in an indifferent tone, "Your Blood Shadow Tower is a profit-driven organization. When you're angry, you even dare to assassinate people from overlord forces. Tell me, what do you want?" Xiao Gongshu could tell at a glance that the black-robed old man wasn't completely rejecting him. A favor was not enough for Blood Shadow Pavilion to act. "Haha, Master Xiao, you are indeed wise. In fact, the conditions are very simple. They couldn't be any simpler for you," the black-robed old man said with a smile. "Tell me," Xiao Gongshu said. "Master Xiao, I'm afraid it's very difficult for you to stay in Divine Artifacts Sect now," the black-robed old man said meaningfully. "What do you mean?" Xiao Gongshu frowned. However, the black-robed old man was telling the truth. After his scheme had been exposed, it was indeed difficult for him to have a place in Divine Artifacts Sect. He might even be expelled directly. It's very simple. The Blood Shadow Pavilion welcomes Master Xiao very much, the black-robed old man said with a smile. Now Xiao Gongshu completely understood. The Blood Shadow Pavilion wanted to rope him in. "Master Xiao, if you join us, you can directly become the high and mighty Deputy Pavilion Lord. As for Yi Guqin, we'll also take care of him for you," the black-robed old man said. Xiao Gongshu's expression changed, but he agreed in the end. "All right, that's fine. However, how are you going to assassinate Yi Guqin?" Xiao Gongshu asked. "It's very simple. When Sky Burial Island opens, a group of prodigies from the Blood Shadow Pavilion will also enter. At that time, assassinating Yi Guqin will be a piece of cake. Moreover, because it will be within Sky Burial Island, the faction behind him will not be able to find out," the black-robed old man said. "All right. As long as you can kill Yi Guqin, why not let me join the Blood Shadow Pavilion?" Xiao Gongshu made his decision. As expected of Master Xiao. "Straightforward," the black-robed old man said with a smile. "Yi Guqin, only your death can dispel the hatred in my heart," Xiao Gongshu muttered to himself. On the other side, Yi Guqin did not know that an assassination plan had already begun. Yi Guqin did not stay in Divine Artifacts Sect for long before he returned to Sword Dynasty with the Divine Eagle and Blackie. As for Duan Tianfeng, he stayed in Divine Artifacts Sect and became a great elder. Unsurprisingly, What happened in the heavenly craftsmanship city spread out in all directions in just a few days. Have you heard about what happened in heavenly craftsmanship city recently? Of course I have. That Yi Guqin is too unexpected. Not only is he strong, but he also has such great strength in the way of forging. Yes. Nangong Jiuyin is known as the young master of divine weapons. He specializes in forging. I did not expect that he would lose to Yi Guqin. TSK. Yi Guqin is not only the Jiankui of Sword Dynasty now. He is also the future master of Divine Artifacts sect. Sword Dynasty and Divine Artifacts sect are two major forces. Although they are not dominating forces, they are still top forces. Plus, there is that Luoquan in Holy Emperor world. Yi Guqin is not someone the Starry Sword Pavilion can mess with as they wish. That is not necessarily true. We still have to see the Battle of Sky Burial Island. Di Haoyan of Divine Sword Sect will not let Yi Guqin go. We will have a good show by then. Yi Guqin's deeds were discussed everywhere in Nantian region. As for Yi Guqin, he had already returned to the Sword Dynasty to make the final preparations. 2 months passed by very quickly. Yi Guqin spent some time in Divine Artifacts sect. Therefore, not long after he returned to Sword Dynasty to cultivate in seclusion, the Battle of Sky Burial Island was approaching. This battle was not like the one in Holy Emperor World. The Battle of Holy Emperor World could be regarded as an internal struggle. The most excellent talents of Nantian region had to be selected. The Battle of Sky Burial Island was a battle between Nantian region and the Dark World. At that time, the talents of Nantian region would have to fight against the talents of the Dark World. Due to the special environment, the Dark World was full of fighting and killing. Therefore, the talents of the Dark World had more combat experience and skills than the talents of Nantian region, who lived like princes. It was also rumored that all the elites of the Dark World would participate in the Battle of Sky Burial Island. The small giants of the Dark World would appear one after another to hunt down the top talents of Nantian region. An ultimate battle was coming. Chapter 1372. The entire Nantian region was in an uproar because of what happened on Sky Burial Island. On the Starry Sword Pavilion's side, the atmosphere was a little gloomy. The Battle of the Sacred Emperor World was like a nightmare for the Starry Sword Pavilion. The 4 young Star Lords in Gu Xiaoyang, a total of 5 top geniuses, had all died at the hands of Yi Guqin. Song Yuyao and Zhou Heng had also died. Almost all of the famous 7 Big Dipper disciples of the Starry Sword Pavilion had died at the hands of Yi Guqin. It was definitely a big blow to the Starry Sword Pavilion. What was more infuriating was that the Starry Sword Pavilion was unable to kill Yi Guqin for the time being. They could only pursue the matter after the battle on Sky Burial Island. This made the elders of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion and the ordinary disciples feel aggrieved, just as the Starry Sword Pavilion was shrouded in a gloomy cloud. In the depths of the Starry Sword Pavilion, a mountain suddenly burst out with dazzling purple brilliance. Vaguely, everyone seemed to see a purple Emperor star slowly flickering in the sky. That's the Ziwei Emperor star, could it be? Some elders of the Starry Sword Pavilion couldn't help but exclaim. As for the ordinary disciples, they all had puzzled looks on their faces. They only knew about the 7 Big Dipper disciples, but they didn't know that the Starry Sword Pavilion actually had other geniuses. At the moment when everyone's gazes were focused on the mountain peak, a voice suddenly rang out. Purple clouds spread out as if forming a purple cloud bridge. A beautiful figure stepped on the cloud bridge and slowly walked out. It was a tall and slender woman, dressed in a purple dress that wrapped around her slender and delicate body. Her long purple hair shone like a mirror, draping straight down like silk. Her face was white and exquisite. Her eyes were like stars, filled with purple light. 2 purple jade earrings hung on her snow-white earlobes, adding a touch of nobility and elegance to the woman. Many disciples of the Starry Sword Pavilion were dumbfounded when they saw the beautiful woman in the purple dress. But what made them even more shocked was that the woman in the purple dress faintly emitted an aura that had reached the 9th level of the divine dwelling realm. She was only 1 step away from the venerables of the Heaven Palace. This shocked all the disciples of the Starry Sword Pavilion. What's going on? Since when did our Starry Universe Sword Pavilion have such a young genius? That's right. At such a young age, his cultivation has already reached the peak of the 9th layer of the divine dwelling realm. Is he comparable to the heaven prides of the 4 emperors? Many disciples of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion were speechless. On the other hand, the elders of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion weren't too surprised, as they already knew that the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion had 2 supreme talents: the Son of 7 Stars and the Emperor Star Maiden. The purple-haired woman in front of him was the Purple Star Maiden Jiang Ziwei. I didn't expect that the 7 Great Bears would all be defeated by one person. That person must be very unhappy, right? Jiang Ziwei thought to herself. The one she was referring to was none other than the Son of 7 Stars. The 7 Great Bears were originally just resources for the Sons of 7 Stars. But now, their resources had been destroyed by Yi Guqin, and the Sons of 7 Stars would have to delay for a while before they could be born. But now, because the Burial Sky Island was about to open, and the 7 Great Bears were all wiped out, the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion had no heaven prides to hold the fort, so they could only summon the Purple Star Maiden. I'm curious about Yi Guqin. What kind of person is he? Jiang Ziwei's eyes were filled with purple light, flickering slightly. But unfortunately, the Star Lord and the others have instructed me to find out the whereabouts of the God Devourer sword in the Burial Sky Island, and then kill Yi Guqin. Jiang Ziwei shook her head slightly, her delicate face looking very calm. It seemed that it wasn't too difficult for her to deal with Yi Guqin. With the Purple Star Maiden's birth, our Starry Universe Sword Pavilion will be able to turn the tide and fight again. Many elders of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion were excited. In the Heavenly God Sword Sect, a handsome young man in white robes walked towards a forbidden area with a formation. This young man was Chu Xuanjin. After stepping into the forbidden area, he looked around and saw a young man with a perfect temperament sitting cross-legged on a futon. Inside the formation, many strange fires of heaven and earth were burning the human sovereign sword. The golden crystals on the surface of the human sovereign sword had melted a lot. The young man was wearing a loose white robe, and his skin was as clear as jade, shining brightly. His long golden hair was extremely dazzling, and his silver eyes were as deep as the moon. He was handsome, and his temperament was natural, as if he was the most perfect work of God, not a bit more, not a bit less. He had an otherworldly and noble temperament, and he didn't look like a mortal. This was the perfect temperament that only a 10th grade supreme talent could have. Who else could this young man be but Di Haotian? Greetings, senior brother Haotian. I'm Chu Xuanjin. Chu Xuanjin cupped his hands slightly. Is the sacred imperial world over? Di Haotian asked. He had been cultivating in seclusion in the forbidden area, and he didn't want anyone to disturb him, so he didn't know much about what was going on outside. Chu Xuanjin looked a little ashamed and said, I'm sorry to disappoint you, senior brother Haotian. I didn't get the best in the sacred imperial world. Oh, except for a few people like Huang Qianqiu and Jun Xiaoyao, you should be able to rank at the top, Di Haotian said. I didn't expect that Jian Kuei from the Sword Dynasty to be Yi Guqin. He hit it too well. A cold light flashed in Chu Xuanjin's eyes. Just as Chu Xuanjin finished speaking, Di Haotian's eyes suddenly narrowed, and an invisible aura spread out, making Chu Xuanjin and the other supreme talents feel a little suffocated. He is indeed a venerable of the heavenly palace. Chu Xuanjin was shocked. You mean Yi Guqin? Di Haotian asked. Yi Guqin was still fresh in Di Haotian's memory. After all, Yi Guqin was the only one who had severely injured him among his peers. Before this, almost no other supreme talent of the same generation could seriously injure Di Haotian. That was why he remembered it so clearly. Yes, this is what happened. Following that, Chu Xuanjin told Di Haotian everything that had happened in the Sacred Emperor realm in detail. After listening, Di Haotian said calmly, I didn't expect that the ant from back then to have grown to this level. Di Haotian's expression was still calm, like a god. In his opinion, Yi Guqin was able to severely injure him not because of Yi Guqin's own strength. Instead, it was because Yi Guqin had taken the 9 Deaths No Regrets elixir, and then somehow borrowed a trace of the Celestial Emperor Sword's power to injure him. In short, Yi Guqin did not rely on his own strength, but on external objects. Therefore, Di Haotian thought that Yi Guqin was just an ant. Senior brother Haotian, you don't have to do anything. I can kill Yi Guqin, Chu Xuanjin said confidently. He was also a supreme talent. Previously, when he was in the sacred imperial realm, he did not have the chance to fight with Yi Guqin. I will also go to the burial island this time. If I am too lazy to do anything, then you can kill him. Di Haotian waved his hand and said casually. Yes, Chu Xuanjin said while holding his fists together. Yi Guqin, this time, can you borrow the power of the 9 Deaths No Regrets elixir and the Celestial Emperor sword? If I bring the human ruler's sword, I wonder what kind of expression you will show? Di Haotian's lips curled into a faint smile. This time he would bring the human ruler's sword. This was because Di Haotian had read many ancient books. It was very likely that there was something he wanted on Burial Sky Island. The Earth Ruler's sword. Chapter 1373. 2 months had passed since the end of the battle in the sacred imperial realm. These 2 months were supposed to be a peaceful period of preparation for war. However, there was one thing that ignited public opinion in the entire Nantian region. Yi Guqin had defeated the divine weapon prince, Nangong Juyun, in the art of smithing and became the young sect leader of the divine weapon sect. When everyone heard about this, their first reaction was to be astonished. That's right, astonishment. Yi Guqin's name was naturally well known in the Nantian region, but he was more famous in the art of swordsmanship and martial arts. As for the art of forging, not many people knew about it. Even though some people knew that Yi Guqin was the disciple of the South Forging Saint, Forge Tianfeng, they did not think that his smithing skills were that great. However, Yi Guqin's performance in the selection of the young master could be said to be amazing. Even Nangong Juyun, who specialized in forging, was defeated by Yi Guqin. TSK, Yi Guqin is really a monster. Did he start cultivating in his mother's womb? But to be honest, although Yi Guqin's performance was amazing, he might not be able to survive the burial island. That's right. Even though he's the sword champion of the Sword Dynasty and the young master of the Divine Artifact sect, he's still a little weak compared to the Celestial God Sword sect, Starry Sword Pavilion, Dongfang Clan, and other forces. The entire Nantian region was talking about Yi Guqin. At this moment, Yi Guqin himself was in the Sword Dynasty, making the final preparations. In the sky, several large ships were floating in the void. Yi Guqin and the other swordsmen of the Sword Dynasty were standing among them. Zhao Xiaodi, the princess of the War God Dynasty, was also standing beside Yi Guqin. As for Jun Xiaoyao, Zhao Shinkong, and the others, they had already returned to their respective forces to rest and prepare for the burial island. As for Yan Wushuang, Jiling, and the others, they would follow Yi Guqin to Sky Burial Island. However, they would not participate in the Battle of Sky Burial Island. Yan Wushuang and the others were self-aware. The outside world knew that they had a close relationship with Yi Guqin. If they participated in Sky Burial Island and were not strong enough, not only would they be in danger, but they would also implicate Yi Guqin. Because of that, Yan Wushuang and the others would only follow him and not enter Sky Burial Island. In addition, the proud divine continent, Confuzi, and Wu Hongyan were also present. In the Sword Dynasty, only Leng Qianhen and the other saints were left behind. Yi Guqin, I will go with you this time. No matter what, I will do my best to protect you. The proud divine continent spoke, its tone resolute. Many thanks to Senior Proud Divine Continent. Yi Guqin slightly cupped his hands. As for the Yukuan, Beimiao, the North Nether King, it had already left the Sword Dynasty a month ago. No one knew where it had gone. However, Yi Guqin believed that it must have been secretly observing him. Sky Burial Island, this day has finally come. Yi Guqin stood on the deck of the ship with his hands behind his back. His black hair fluttered in the wind. Although he did not deliberately reveal his aura, there seemed to be sword intent and battle intent rising in the void. He hadn't forgotten what had happened at the infinite desolate plains until now. It was still vivid in his mind. Su Jianshi had sacrificed herself in front of him, and was sealed in the human sovereign sword. Di Haotian had used a high and mighty tone to judge him like a god. Now Yi Guqin believed that even without the power of the 9 deaths regretless pill and the celestial emperor sword, he could fight Di Haotian with his own strength. Not to mention, he still had his strongest trump card, Duga begging demons. Just as Yi Guqin and the people of the Sword Dynasty were about to set off for Sky Burial Island, on the side of the Mola Dynasty, a black ship rose into the sky. Duga begging demons and Princess Luoho stood on the deck. He wore a black robe and had 3,000 feet of white hair. His dark golden right eye was deep and charming. His handsome and charming face was expressionless, and his aura was cold and evil. Beside him, Princess Luoho looked at Dugu begging demons and wanted to say something. Begging demons, what is the relationship between you and Yi Guqin? Princess Luoho bit her red lips and asked. Because Duga begging demons had treated Yi Guqin very strangely in the sacred emperor realm. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask, Duga begging demons said indifferently. Yes. Princess Luoho lowered her head. She had a cold and domineering personality, but in front of the even colder and more domineering Duga begging demons, she could only bow her head. Di Haotian, let's settle all our grudges in the sacred emperor realm. Duga begging demons whispered in his heart. Yi Guqin's grudge was his grudge. The entire Nantian region was stirred because of the incident on Zongtian Island. The sword pavilions all set off. On the Luofu sword pavilion's side, Jun Xiaoyao also set off. His white sleeves fluttered in the wind like a banished immortal. He was elegant and handsome. The final battle on Zongtian Island. I think Brother Yi and Di Haotian will have a life-and-death battle. I hope he can be safe, Jun Xiaorao murmured. He did not say that he hoped Yi Guqin could defeat Di Haotian, because that would be too difficult. Di Haotian's reputation was not built in a day or two. It was a reputation that had been accumulated over a long time. He and Gu Xiaoyang were definitely not on the same level. On the Misty Sword Pavilion's side, Yi Songyue also set off. Her feelings toward Yi Guqin were complicated. But she was sure that she did not want to see Yi Guqin fall in the hands of Di Haotian. On the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion's side, Huang Qianqiu also came out of seclusion. As one of the 4 emperors, his cultivation had improved again after the Sacred Emperor realm. He had reached the peak of the 9th level of the Divine Dwelling realm, and was only a step away from the Venerable of the Celestial Palace. This trip to Zongtian Island will be an opportunity for me to break through to the Venerable realm. And Yi Guqin, no matter what, he will not be able to walk out of Zongtian Island alive, Huang Qianqiu whispered. Because there were too many people who wanted to kill Yi Guqin on Zongtian Island. Di Haotian, Chu Xuanjin, and Huang Qianqiu. Any one of them was an absolutely strong opponent. On the Starry Sword Pavilion's side, the Ziwei Star Maiden, Jiang Ziwei, boarded a flying boat and flew across the sky. Yi Guqin, I'm really curious what kind of person he will be. Not only the sword pavilions but the 3 major sects also took action. On the Heavenly God Sword sect's side, a golden dragon boat rose into the sky. It was dazzling and magnificent. Countless disciples of the Heavenly God Sword sect looked up, their faces full of admiration and respect. It's senior brother Haotian, he finally came out of seclusion. Who can stop senior brother Haotian when he comes out of seclusion? Whether it's the Nantian region or the Dark World, there are probably not many heaven prides who can compete with senior brother Di Haotian. Yes, even Yi Guqin, who has been in the limelight recently, can only die in front of senior brother Di Haotian. Yes, a person who relied on external objects to hurt senior brother Haotian. What qualifications does he have to be called a heaven pride? The disciples of the Heavenly God Sword sect all admired Di Haotian. In their view, Yi Guqin only relied on external objects to luckily injure Di Haotian. If it was a real battle, Yi Guqin would definitely not be Di Haotian's opponent. Everyone in the Heavenly God Sword sect thought so. Chapter 1374. On the Battle God Saber sect's side, Dao Wuming and Gu Zun were also prepared. Especially Gu Zun. His hair was unkempt and his beard was unkempt, but no one in the Battle God Saber sect dared to underestimate him. Although the battle between prodigies wasn't over yet, Guzun was already on the battle god Sabersek's side. I heard that Guzun has a grudge with Yi Guqin in the past. I heard that too. The two seem to have engaged in a sword and saber duel. Although Yi Guqin won in the end, it was a Pyrrhic victory. Guzun is really unique to be able to push Yi Guqin to that extent. Many battle god saber sect disciples whispered to each other. Guzun, you don't have to do this. Even if you don't do anything, Yi Guqin won't be able to survive Sky Burial Island, Dao Wuming said, shaking his head. Guzun's expression didn't change as he said in a hoarse voice, "You're wrong. Killing Yi Guqin isn't my goal. Ending things with him and having a sword and saber duel is my goal," said Guzun. If he only wanted Yi Guqin dead, he could have just watched Di Haoyan, Chu Xuanjin, Huang Qianqiu, and the others kill Yi Guqin. But if he didn't have a sword and saber duel with Yi Guqin, his obsession would never be removed. Yi Guqin, I'll end things on Sky Burial Island, even if it's for him. Guzun murmured. The him he was referring to was his former master, Yu Bufan. Unfortunately, he couldn't say that name again. The demonic destroyer sect. In a continuous stretch of pitch-black mountain range. Suddenly, a strange phenomenon appeared in the sky. 10 huge pitch-black demonic figures stood tall in the sky. Each of them was like the king of hell, emitting a bone-chilling aura that made one's heart palpitate. That phenomenon, is it Holy Yama? Is he finally coming out of seclusion? This phenomenon attracted the attention of many elders and disciples of the demonic extermination sect. On top of a mountain, Wan'er's tall and slim figure stood tall and straight. The black dress outlined her devilish figure. Her beautiful face was covered with a black veil, only revealing a pair of watery eyes. Is the Yama King finally coming out? Wan'er mumbled to herself. Her eyes were filled with seriousness. The Holy Yama was simply too powerful. He was one of the 4 emperors, Hades, and was on par with Huang Qianqiu. Boom. Just as Wan'er was thinking about this, a loud explosion came from the mountains not far away. Then a silhouette broke out and stood in the sky. It was a young man in a pitch-black robe with dark golden patterns on the edges of his sleeves. His appearance was handsome, but his skin was abnormally pale, without the slightest trace of blood. His eyes were completely devoid of white and filled with darkness, just like the eyes of a devil. 10 pitch-black Yama Kings circled around him. That was his innate talent phenomenon, the 10 Kings of Hell. The Holy Yama himself was like the ruler of the 10 Kings of Hell. He looked around and saw Wan'er. Immediately, his body moved and turned into a wisp of black smoke. The next moment he appeared in front of Wan'er. Wan'er, I didn't expect you to be here waiting for me to come out. The Holy Yama smiled wickedly. His pitch-black eyes scanned Wan'er's graceful body up and down. He didn't hide it at all. Wan'er frowned, and a tinge of annoyance appeared in her beautiful eyes. Although she had the title of demoness and looked unrestrained, she was actually very protective of her body. She hadn't even let other men touch her jade-like hands. The Holy Yama had always been lusting after her, and he didn't hide it. This was why Wan'er was disgusted. You think too much. I just want to see how much you've improved. It seems that you still haven't broken through to the Celestial Palace Honorable Realm. Wan'er said, pursing her lips. Haha, it's not that easy to break through to the Celestial Palace Honorable Realm. However, I have the chance to do so on Sky Burial Island. The Holy Yama didn't mind. What he needed to do now was to break through to the Celestial Palace Honorable Realm on Sky Burial Island. Then he would think of a way to become the young sect master of the demonic sect. This way, even if Wan'er's status wasn't low, he could take it as he wished. Wan'er obviously knew what the Holy Yama was thinking. That was why she wanted to support Duguqiu-mo. The first reason why Wan'er wanted to support Duguqiu-mo was because Duguqiu-mo had the Demon King descending to the 9th heaven vision. He could cultivate the Demonic Heart Sutra, the core cultivation technique of the demonic sect. The second reason was naturally to support Duguqiu-mo, to become the young sect master of the demonic sect. This would make the Holy Yama's plan fail. The Holy Yama glanced at Wan'er. He seemed to have thought of something and said, Wan'er, I heard that you found a martial artist called Duguqiu-mo outside. He has the legendary Demon King descending to the 9th heaven vision? Wana wasn't surprised by the holy Yama's words. Although he was cultivating in seclusion, many disciples in the sect were loyal to him. Therefore, it was easy for him to find out about Duguchyo-emo. That's right. After the Battle of the Geniuses, Duguchyo-emo will probably join the demonic sect, Wana said directly. With Duguchyo-mo's strength and talent, he would definitely be recruited by the demonic extermination sect if nothing unexpected happened. Humph, what if I don't let him walk out of Sky Burial Island? The Holy Yama said coldly. What the Holy Yama wanted was the young sect master of the demonic sect. Duguchyo-emo was clearly a huge threat. He's not as weak as you think. It's not that easy for you to kill him, Wana said coldly. Duguchyo-mo's strength had begun to show in the Holy Emperor world. He was someone who could even fight against Huang Qianqiu. The Holy Yama was as famous as Huang Qianqiu. Therefore, it wouldn't be that easy for him to kill Duguchyo-emo, is that so? Let's wait and see. The Holy Yama smiled coldly. As time passed, the people from the 3 sects and the 4 sword pavilions set off. The 4 overlord families, Dongfang, Nangong, Shimin and Baiming, were also preparing to set off. Originally, there should be 5 families including the Su family. However, the Su family had been destroyed, so there were only 4 of them left. The geniuses of the 4 overlord families hadn't participated in the Battle of the Holy Emperor world. Therefore, they naturally had to participate in the Battle of Sky Burial Island. Nangong Juyin also set off from the Nangong family. There was a cold look in his eyes. Nangong Juyin didn't only know how to forge. He cultivated both the martial way and craftsmanship way. Yi Guqin, I will take revenge for my failure in forging. Nangong Juyin said coldly in his heart. On the other hand, the Dongfang family, as the leader of the 4 families, had the most extravagant display. A group of young geniuses and family members of the Dongfang family stood on a ship. Their faces were filled with leisurely calmness. Among them, there was a girl in purple. If Yi Guqin was here, he would definitely recognize her. It was Dongfang Ziyun. Chapter 1375. As the leader of the 4 overlord families, the Dongfang family naturally had a strong foundation. The saying "the sun rises from the east" wasn't just for show. At this moment, Dongfang Ziyun was talking to a handsome young man on the Dongfang family's ship. This young man was dressed in a luxurious golden robe. His face was fair and handsome. What caught people's attention was his eyes. They were also golden like 2 small suns. He seemed to have walked out of the sun, and his radiance was dazzling. The young people of the Dongfang family seemed to regard him as their leader. The young man with golden eyes was the top genius of the Dongfang family, one of the 10 great young masters, young master Tongtian, Dongfang Guangyao. It was said that when he was born, there was a sun in his dantian, and he had the physique of light. He was extremely talented. He cultivated and became one of the 10 great young masters, young master Tongtian. He was also a veteran young master like Chu Xuanjin and Jun Xiaoyao, and not a new young master like Gu Xiaoyang. Ziyun, you said that you met Yi Guqin in that small low-level empire? Dongfang Guangyao asked. That's right. Dongfang Ziyun nodded. Her heart was like a snake, and she was full of schemes. She had persevered from a side branch of the Dongfang family until now, and entered the core circle of the Dongfang family's younger generation. Her cultivation had also improved, and she had reached the 6th level of the Divine Palace. Of course, this was largely because she had clung onto Dongfang Guangyao's thigh. Dongfang Ziyun was extremely scheming. In order to save her own life, she had killed Dongfang Hong without hesitation in the Tianhuang Plains. In the end, she pushed all the blame for his death onto Yi Guqin. It could be said that the reason the Dongfang family and Yi Guqin had a grudge, to a large extent, it was because of Dongfang Ziyun's interference. It was because of her that the Dongfang family and Yi Guqin were at odds with each other. I heard that Yi Guqin also killed people of the Dongfang family? Dongfang Guangyao said indifferently. That's right. Yi Guqin was very decisive and ruthless. He didn't show any mercy. If I wasn't lucky enough to escape, I probably wouldn't have been able to escape death. Dongfang Ziyun's body trembled, and she pretended to be frightened. It's fine. Since Yi Guqin offended the Dongfang family, I will definitely make him pay the price. He definitely won't survive Burial Sky Island. Dongfang Guangyao didn't care. Then I'll need brother Guangyao. Dongfang Ziyun's smile, but at the same time, her heart was cold. Yi Guqin was the only person who knew her. Dongfang Hong's was the only one who knew Dongfang Hong. Although the Dongfang family would not believe Yi Guqin's one-sided story, the Dongfang family would not believe him. However, to be on the safe side, Dongfang Ziyun would think of a way to get rid of Yi Guqin in the Burial Sky Island. Oh right, there's also the Baiming family. They've always been at odds with the Dongfang family. Now that we're on Burial Sky Island, we can get rid of them. Dongfang Guangyao smiled. Burial Sky Island was originally the place where the Sky Prides of the South Sky region and the Dark World fought. But now, it had become the place where the major forces schemed against each other. Somewhere in the South Sky region, there was a hidden pavilion. This was one of the strongholds of the Blood Shadow Pavilion. At this moment, 3 figures wearing blood-red robes and blood-red hoods appeared in a blood-red pavilion. Some of the Blood Shadow Pavilion's assassins saw this and couldn't help but exclaim, "Is it finally over? Are these 3 the only ones who survived?" In this blood-red pavilion, there were a total of 300 top-notch Sky Prides of assassins. In the end, only 3 of them walked out alive. It's the Thousand-Faced Demoness, Blade Armajura and Killer Boy. As expected, the 3 of them survived until the end. Many of the Blood Shadow Pavilion's assassins exclaimed. The 3 of them could be said to be the strongest Sky Prides in the Blood Shadow Pavilion. They even dared to kill the Sky Prides of the Overlord-level forces. At this moment, a blood-red talisman fell from the sky. One of the 3 people raised his hand and took the talisman. There were only 3 words written on it. Yi Guqin. Hee, it seems like Burial Sky Island won't be too boring this time. A cold voice sounded. With the opening of Burial Sky Island, the entire South Sky region became restless. The 3 sects, 4 pavilions, 5 clans, and even the great dynasties began to make their moves. Meanwhile, in a mysterious place, the endless sea rumbled and surged. What was even more shocking was that this sea actually seemed to extend out of the void. It was vast, and no one knew how deep or far it was. Ordinary people would definitely be shocked by the scene in front of them. However, only some of the older members of the major forces vaguely knew what this place was. Sky Ceiling Sacred Ocean. A mountain, a sea, and a celestial valley. The mountain referred to the Sky Mountain Sword Tribe. The celestial valley referred to the Supreme Celestial Valley. The sea referred to the Sky Ceiling Sacred Ocean in front of them, which seemed to have come from the void. At this moment, on the other side of the sea, 4 maidservants in blue dresses were carrying an ice palanquin. The ice palanquin swayed slightly, and the bead curtain flashed vaguely, revealing a corner inside. It was a young girl in a blue silk dress. Her ice blue hair set off her snow-white face. Her eyes were also ice blue, which was magnificent and mysterious. If Yi Guqin was here, he would definitely be able to recognize that this girl was very similar to someone. I heard that the Heaven Weeping Witch from the Dark World will also appear on Burial Sky Island this time. The Heaven Weeping Witch is a disaster, and must be killed in the cradle. Perhaps we can join forces with the other emperors, and even Di Haotian to kill the Heaven Weeping Witch together. Also, I have a feeling that I will end a karma when I go to Burial Sky Island this time. Then who is the cause and effect on? The young girl with ice blue hair muttered to herself. Almost no one knew that a peerless genius in Sky Ceiling Sacred Ocean had come out of seclusion. The world had another name for her. One of the 4 emperors. The Holy Emperor. In a chaotic place filled with black fog, 2 figures stood there. One of them was a melancholy man in a snow-white robe. He was holding a jade flute horizontally and playing it. Beside him stood a silver-haired girl. The girl was as beautiful as ice. Her long silver hair set off her fair and delicate face. Her eyelashes were curled and long, and her nose and small mouth were all exquisite and pretty. She was like an angel who had fallen to the mortal world. One look at her would make one's heart melt. However, the girl's little face did not have the naive expression of a child. There was only a coldness that kept people thousands of miles away. Qinxue, You might be able to see the brother you have been thinking about day and night. The man in snow-white robe who was playing the flute said with a faint smile. Only then did the girl's little face faintly show a wisp of vitality and light. Brother Yi, the girl murmured. Chapter 1376. The entire Nantian region was surging with winds and clouds. In the sky, a ship traversed the void. It was the ship of the Sword Dynasty. Yi Guqin and the other Sword Sons were listening to Confuzi explain some information about Sky Burial Island. Sky Burial Island is located in the Two-World Mountain. It used to be a forbidden area, Confuzi said. Forbidden area? Yi Guqin was a little confused when he heard this. It was the first time he had heard of such a thing. Confuzi continued. There are some secrets of Nantian region that you may not know. In fact, apart from Sky Burial Island, there are 3 forbidden areas in Nantian region. 3 forbidden areas? Not only Yi Guqin, but Jian Jinghong and the others were also a little surprised, because they had never heard of the 3 forbidden areas in Nantian region. But why is there no such news in Nantian region at all? Jian Jinghong asked. Confuzi shook his head slightly and said, It's very simple. Because the 3 forbidden areas are guarded by the 3 hidden forces. Naturally, there is very little news spread out. I see. Yi Guqin suddenly understood. He didn't expect that the 3 hidden forces were actually responsible for this. However, Yi Guqin vaguely felt that the mountains, sea, and valley seemed to be the supervisors of Nantian region. Confuzi continued. Although Sky Burial Island is not a forbidden area now, it used to be. Therefore, there may be various strange creatures of foreign clans in Sky Burial Island. Creatures of foreign clans? Jian Jinghong and the others were confused. Instead, Yi Guqin's eyes flashed with a dim light. Could it be? That's right. The creatures of foreign clans refer to the creatures of Dark World, Confuzi said. Dark World. The other Sword Sons were still confused. However, Yi Guqin was very clear. Because Duga's talent of seeking demons came from the soul-devouring clan in Dark World. And there were obviously many clans in Dark World. This soul-devouring clan seemed to be at the top in the Dark World. Therefore, when you are on Burial Sky Island, not only do you have to be wary of the geniuses of the Dark World, but you also have to be careful of the creatures of the Dark World. There may not be any particularly powerful existences among them, but if you encounter them, they will be very difficult to deal with, Confuzi warned. Understood. Jian Jinghong and the others nodded. By the way, your main task is to face the heavenly talents from the Dark World. I guess you don't know much about the Dark World, right? Confuzi asked. Hearing Confuzi's words, the Sword Sons present looked at each other and nodded slightly. Indeed, they had never come into contact with the Dark World. Yi Guqin's expression did not change. He had interacted with people from the underworld before. For example, Shui Yiqing and Shui should also be counted. In addition, Duga Qiuma had also met a genius from the Dark World in the Azura Bloody Road of the Molo dynasty. He was the mysterious number 1 on the blood ranking, Yi Tsongshan. Presumably, Yi Tsongshan would also participate this time. The Dark World is independent of the Nantian region. According to legend, it is a world formed by the combination of 7 Saint Emperor small worlds. However, this is only a legend. After all, it is too long ago, Confuzi explained. 7 Saint Emperor small worlds? The Sword Master's words caused everyone to be shocked. They had never expected the Dark World to have such a history. Yi Guqin was also a little surprised. After all, he had experienced the Saint Emperor small worlds. The Saint Emperor world was an example. However, he also did not expect the Dark World to be formed by 7 Saint Emperor small worlds. Did that mean that the Dark World was jointly created by 7 Saint Emperors? What was the purpose of the 7 Saint Emperors? Why did the Dark World oppose the Nantian region? Yi Guqin realized that the more he knew, the more doubts he had. Confuzi said, Actually, you don't need to pay attention to how the Dark World came about. What you need to pay attention to is how powerful the geniuses of the Dark World are. Hearing this, everyone, including Yi Guqin, paid full attention and perked up. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will win every battle. They indeed needed to understand the geniuses of the dark world. Confuzi looked around and said, actually the dark world is the same as the Nantian region. They also have some rankings for the geniuses. The Nantian region has 1 emperor, 4 kings, 10 young masters, and geniuses on the Dragon Phoenix list. Speaking of this, Confuzi glanced at Yi Guchen, because Yi Guchen was a genius who had just become one of the 10 young masters. And the geniuses of the dark world also have a saying, that is, the twin stars of war and calamity, the 4 giants, the 7 overlords and the 13 guardians. Confuzi's words made Yi Guchen and the others look slightly serious. Obviously, these geniuses of the dark world were not easy to deal with. The strength of the 13 guardians is almost equivalent to the geniuses on the Dragon Phoenix list in the Nantian region. The 7 overlords are equivalent to the 10 young masters. The 4 giants are almost equivalent to the 4 kings. As for the twin stars of war and calamity, they are probably comparable to geniuses like Di Haotian. Confuzi's explanation made the atmosphere slightly silent. It seemed that the geniuses of the dark world were stronger than they had imagined. So remember, on the burial island, the most important thing is to save your own life. The second thing is to get a ranking, Confuzi said earnestly. How do you calculate the ranking on the battlefield of geniuses? Jian Jinghong asked. It's very simple. The Nantian region and the dark world will judge the strength of each other's geniuses. Then they will be divided into ordinary, dangerous, extremely dangerous, and forbidden. Killing geniuses of the dark world of different levels will give you different points. The final score will be calculated, and the final ranking on the battlefield of geniuses will be determined. Confuzi's explanation enlightened Yi Guchen and the others. This kind of classification was simple and clear. In that case, won't Brother Yi be assigned to the extremely dangerous level by the geniuses of the dark world? Jian Jinghong said with a smile. Master should be able to be assigned to the forbidden level, right? Mu Xingzu said. That's not necessarily true. There are very few geniuses of the Nantian region who can be rated as the forbidden level. Probably only those at the level of Di Haotian can reach it. But this is good. The higher the position, the easier it is to be targeted by the geniuses of the dark world, Confuzi said. Yi Guchen shook his head slightly. He didn't care what kind of level he would be judged by the geniuses of the dark world. But Yi Guchen was confident that he could compete with Di Haotian. A genius who was rated as the extremely dangerous level, had a combat strength comparable to the forbidden level. It was exciting just thinking about it. And most importantly, Yi Guchen wasn't the only one who had a combat strength comparable to the forbidden level. Even his clone, De Guqioma, probably had a combat strength comparable to the forbidden level. When 2 forbidden level combatants joined forces, that kind of scene was unimaginable. Chapter 1377. After Confuzi's explanation, Yi Guchen and the others had a basic understanding of the dark world and Sky Burial Island. Next, they went straight to Borderline Mountain. Borderline Mountain was located in the far west of the Nantian region. Because it used to be a forbidden area, it was desolate and uninhabited. However, this deathly silence was broken not long after. Many ships sailed across the sky. Young geniuses from various forces stood on them. They were all dignified, high-spirited, and eager to fight. The battle on Sky Burial Island was not only an internal battle in the Nantian region, but also a battle with the geniuses of the dark world. It would be a big stage. Anyone who could perform well would become a celebrity in the Nantian region. Those geniuses who had not joined the Overlord-level forces would also be recruited by the Overlord-level forces. Therefore, none of the geniuses dared to underestimate this battle. That's the fleet of ships from the Sword Dynasty. Is that the famous Yi Guchen? Many people from different forces turned their gazes to a ship. It was the ship Yi Guchen was on. Yi Guchen defeated Nangong Juyin not long ago, and became the young master of the artifact sect. I wonder how he will perform this time. Yi Guchen is the best in the Holy Emperor realm. However, with Di Haotian and the others here, Yi Guchen might not even be able to keep his life, let alone show off. Many people were discussing spiritedly. Yi Guchen ignored the discussions of the outside world. At this moment he looked into the distance. He could vaguely see a towering mountain at the end of the sky. It seemed to extend into the void. He could also see spatial turbulence in the void. Sky Burial Island is located in the void of Borderline Mountain. You can teleport to the island through some teleportation formations, Confuzi said. Yi Guchen nodded slightly. Soon, the ships of many forces approached Borderline Mountain. Brother Yi, you're here. At this moment, a hearty voice sounded. Yi Guchen looked over, and saw that it was the War God Empire's Zhao Shinkong. Brother Zhao. Yi Guchen nodded slightly. He and Zhao Shinkong had long since turned hostility into friendship. Not to mention, Zhao Xiaodi was still by his side as a maid. Perhaps because of this relationship, the conflict between the Sword Dynasty and the War God Dynasty eased a little, although it wasn't to the extent of immediately becoming friends with him. The smell of gunpowder was no longer as strong. A short moment later, the group from the Mola Dynasty arrived as well. Duguqiu Emo stood in the wind, his snow-white hair fluttering in the wind. His devilishly handsome face was expressionless. He did not greet Yi Guchen because he was a sharp sword hidden in the darkness. This sharp sword would be completely unsheathed on Sky Burial Island, and the world would know about it. It was hard to imagine what kind of shock and uproar it would cause when the news that Duguqiu Mo was Yi Guchen's clone was leaked. Not long after, the groups from the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion and the Misty Sword Pavilion arrived as well. Jun Xiaoyao was dressed in white and looked extraordinarily handsome. He nodded slightly at Yi Guchen. As for Yi Songyue, she also greeted him symbolically. She still did not know how to face Yi Guchen. It seems that Yi Guchen still has allies. He's not fighting alone. Many people thought to themselves when they saw this scene. Most people thought that Yi Guchen would not be able to walk out of Sky Burial Island alive. However, it was not certain that he would die. Why bother greeting a dead man? At this moment, a cold snort was heard. The group from the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion had arrived. Huang Qianxiu's purple hair fluttered in the wind, and his purple eyes shone with divine light. It was breathtaking. He was handsome and had the heavenly desolate combat body. He looked like a god of war. At this moment, Huang Qianxiu looked at Yi Guchen as if he was looking at a dead man. He had always wanted to obtain Yi Guchen's ultimate sword domain technique. However, he had never found a suitable opportunity in the Sacred Emperor world. He would not miss this chance to go to Sky Burial Island. Huang Qianxiu. Yi Guchen did not avoid his gaze. Yi Guchen had already lost his patience with this enemy who had always been thinking about him. If there was a chance, he would not mind having a life-and-death battle with Huang Qianxiu on Sky Burial Island. At this moment, a lady's voice was suddenly heard. I didn't expect you to be Yi Guchen, the one who killed the 7 great bears of the Starry Sword Pavilion. Seeing is indeed better than hearing about it 100 times. Yi Guchen frowned when he heard the voice. Not only him, but many people also looked in the direction of the voice. On the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion's airship, there was a tall and slender woman in a purple dress. Her purple dress was glowing and fluttering in the wind. Her face was fair and translucent, and her purple eyes were clear. She seemed to be surrounded by a purple aura. The first impression everyone had when they saw the lady was noble. It was as if she was born with a sense of superiority, as if she was a descendant of the heavens. However, it was not the lady's temperament or appearance that was shocking, but the aura that was faintly emitted from her body. Am I mistaken? The 9th level of the Divine Dwelling Realm? How is this possible? When did the Starry Sword Pavilion nurture such a genius? The entire place was stunned. Many martial artists from various forces widened their eyes. The most famous geniuses of the Starry Sword Pavilion were the 7 Great Bears, and they had all been killed by Yi Guchen. But now, another heaven's favored daughter had appeared. It was truly shocking. However, not everyone was unaware of it. Some people from the overlords were not too surprised. They had known about it for a long time. Have the true geniuses of the Starry Sword Pavilion begun to show themselves? I wonder if the 7 Great Bears have shown themselves. Jun Xiaoyao muttered to himself with a frown. The Ziwei Star Maiden was not simple. It was rumored that she had the Ziwei Emperor star. Such a fate was the sign of an emperor. Although Jiang Ziwei was a lady, it did not weaken the power of her fate. At the same time Jiang Ziwei appeared, Duguqiuma frowned. That was because he had the Tiansha fate. Strictly speaking, such a fate clashed with the Ziwei star fate. One was the Tiansha fate, and the other was the Emperor star. I thought that the Starry Sword Pavilion would have no one after Gu Xiaoyang, and the 4 young Star Lords died. Who would have thought? Yi Guqin sighed secretly. As expected, an overlord-class force wasn't that simple. He could also feel that Jiang Ziwei's strength was even stronger than Gu Xiaoyang's. However, she had been hidden by the Starry Sword Pavilion, and had not shown herself before. It was only now that the 7 great bears had died that she came out to support them. Gu Xiaoyang and the other trash are dead. I'm a little curious. How strong are you? Jiang Ziwei's beautiful eyes sparkled as she sized up Yi Guqin. She did not show any hostility. She did not even care that Yi Guqin had killed Gu Xiaoyang and the others. She was just curious. Chapter 1378. The way Jiang Ziwei looked at Yi Guqin now, there was no deep hatred. After all, the 7 great bears had nothing to do with her. They were the resources of the Sons of 7 Stars. The ones who really hated Yi Guqin were the Sons of 7 Stars, not her. If the Star Master had not warned her to deal with Yi Guqin on Sky Burial Island, Jiang Ziwei would not have given up. Jiang Ziwei might not have attacked Yi Guqin. Hearing Jiang Ziwei's words, Yi Guqin said indifferently, "Curiosity kills the cat. If you're curious about me, you'll have to be careful of your life." Hearing Yi Guqin's words, many of the Sky Prides present were speechless. Jiang Ziwei was a top Sky Pride of the Starry Sword Pavilion who was comparable to the 1 Emperor and 4 Sovereigns. It could be said that there were not many Sky Prides present who were qualified to talk to Jiang Ziwei, let alone threaten her. However, Yi Guqin did not care at all and directly threatened her. Jiang Ziwei was slightly stunned when she heard that. Then, she curled her lips and said, "You're really as arrogant as the rumors say. In that case, we'll see what happens at Sky Burial Island." Jiang Ziwei did not say anything else. As a Sky Pride who had been hidden for the first time, she naturally had her own arrogance. She believed that as long as she was willing to take action, she could suppress Yi Guqin. The 7th Star Master and the others had also arrived and were sitting cross-legged in the void. He also did not say anything because after Sky Burial Island ended, Yi Guqin would definitely die. With the arrival of the 4 Great Sword Pavilions, the atmosphere became more and more heated. At that moment, someone saw the ship in the distance and exclaimed again, "The people from the Overlord families are here." Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. They saw the Dongfang family's team first. That young man in a golden robe who is emitting light should be the top Sky Pride of the Dongfang family, Dongfang Guangyao. Yes, one of the 10 great childs, Child Tongtian, is extremely powerful. However, before everyone could exclaim, the Nangong family, Shimen family, and Baiming family's teams arrived together as if they had made an agreement. On the Nangong family's side, Nangong Juyin was also present. When he saw Yi Guqin, his face was covered with a layer of dark clouds. The humiliation divine artifact sect had suffered was still fresh in his mind. Nangong Juyun's expression is truly terrifying. Of course, if it were you, the position of young sect master that should have been within your grasp was snatched away by someone else. Furthermore, it was a complete defeat. Would you be willing to accept that? Everyone at the scene whispered to each other in whispers. On the side of the Shimen family, the leader of the younger generation was a fatty with a big belly. This fatty was fair and tender, and the fat on his body swayed like waves. His 10 thick and fat fingers were covered with origin rings, and he looked like a nouveau riche. That must be the genius of the Shimen family, the Fugue young master, one of the top 10 young masters, Shimen Fugue. Some people said when they saw the fatty, Shimen Fugue was also a weirdo. Although he was one of the 10 great childs, his combat strength was the lowest among them. His only specialty was his good luck. It was rumored that he had the noble star fate, and was born with great luck. Wherever he went, he could pick up treasures and find hidden treasures. The origin ring on his finger contained all kinds of divine weapons and treasures. Because of this, although his actual combat strength was not high, with all kinds of divine weapons and treasures, he did not need to fear any genius. At this moment, Shimen Fugue's bean-sized eyes glanced at Yi Tsangyue of the Misty Sword Pavilion. Fairy Tsangyue, I'll give you this divine tribulation weapon protective pendant. Shimen Fugue looked at Yi Tsangyue with his beady eyes and a lecherous expression. Shimen Fugue was also one of Yi Tsangyue's suitors. Seeing Shimen Fugue casually give away a divine tribulation weapon protective pendant, many people were dumbfounded. The world of the rich was indeed different. However, Yi Tsangyue did not even look at Shimen Fugue. It was as if she treated him like air. Sigh, I originally wanted to give my heart to the moon, but the moon shines on the ditch. Shimen Fugue looked up at the sky and sighed sadly. If a handsome young master had said this, it would have made some sense. However, with Shimen Fugue's pot-bellied appearance, it was comical no matter how one looked at it. As for the Baiming family, the leader was a young girl in tight clothes. Her hair was tied up in a ponytail, and she had a pretty face. Her beautiful eyes were long and narrow, and she had a cold and sharp aura. The Baiming family was famous for their ghostly movement techniques and deadly martial arts. The two kingsword techniques that Yi Guqin had obtained previously, god-slaying and deity-slaying, came from the Baiming family. That must be the genius of the Baiming family, Baiming Xing. She's ranked 8th on the Dragon Phoenix list. She's not weak at all. Many voices were heard. Baiming Xing was considered a famous genius in the Nantian region. The Dongfang family. Baiming Xing snorted inwardly as she looked at the Dongfang family. The Baiming family and the Dongfang family had a long-standing feud, and had always been at odds. Therefore, the geniuses of the two families had always been fighting both openly and covertly. Previously in the Saint Origin dynasty, Yi Guqin had been mistaken by Dongfang Ziyun and the others for being from the Baiming family, because he had used the god-slaying sword technique. However, the geniuses of the Dongfang family did not pay attention to the Baiming family at this moment. They all looked at Yi Guqin. Dongfang Guangyao said in a playful tone, "Is he Yi Guqin? He's the one who killed the Dongfang family's people?" Dongfang Ziyun nodded and said, "Yes, it's him." On the other side, Yi Guqin also noticed Dongfang Ziyun. It's her. If Dongfang Ziyun had not appeared, he would have almost forgotten about her. This woman was definitely a vicious person. In order to survive, she did not hesitate to kill her companion, Dongfang Hong. After that, she pushed everything to Yi Guqin, which led to the feud between the Dongfang family and Yi Guqin. It could be said that without Dongfang Ziyun, the feud between Yi Guqin and the Dongfang family would not have developed. Thinking of this, Yi Guqin's eyes were filled with coldness. Are you Yi Guqin? You killed the Dongfang family's people and almost killed Sister Ziyun. You better pray that you don't run into me on the burial island. Dongfang Guangyao said calmly. Yi Guqin's performance in the Saint Imperial world was outstanding, and he had even killed Gu Xiaoyang. However, Dongfang Guangyao was also one of the older geniuses. He was not afraid of Yi Guqin. You don't even know that you've been used as a tool. Why don't you ask the person next to you, who killed the Dongfang family's people? Yi Guqin sneered. Yi Guqin, what are you talking about? Are you still trying to deny it? Or are you afraid of Brother Guangyao? Dongfang Ziyun's eyes flashed as she scolded. Chapter 1379. After such a long time, Dongfang Hong was already dead, and there was no evidence. Dongfang Ziyun thought that she had nothing to worry about. No one would know about what she had done, except for Yi Guqin. However, it was obvious that Dongfang Guangyao and the others would not believe Yi Guqin. As long as Dongfang Ziyun insisted that Yi Guqin had killed Dongfang Hong, Yi Guqin could not do anything to her. That was indeed the case. Dongfang Guangyao sneered. Yi Guqin, haven't you always been arrogant? Are you trying to use such a childish method to absolve yourself? Dongfang Ziyun's eyes flashed with coldness and pride. Yi Guqin, no matter how you defend yourself, it's useless. Your ending will not change. Yi Guqin shook his head slightly. His expression did not change at all because of Dongfang Ziyun's words. I don't care what you say. In front of absolute power, all schemes are useless. Inside Sky Burial Island, just prepare to die, Yi Guchen said indifferently. As soon as he said that, all the cultivators from the surrounding forces were stunned. Yi Guchen was openly threatening to kill the Dongfang family? Yi Guchen, how dare you? Dongfang Guangyao scolded coldly. As the top genius of the Dongfang family, no one dared to threaten a member of his family in front of him. Dongfang Ziyun originally wanted to mock and ridicule Yi Guchen. But when she saw Yi Guchen's frosty eyes, her heart began to throb for no reason. It was as if Yi Guchen could really kill her. No, that's impossible. Yi Guchen can't even protect himself in Sky Burial Island. How can he kill me? Dongfang Ziyun muttered as if she was comforting herself. At this moment, many forces had gathered outside Two World Mountain. At this moment, there were black clouds in the distance, and black warships were flying over. It's the demonic sect. Seeing this scene, everyone cried out in alarm. At this moment, at the bow of the demonic extermination sect's ship, a young man in a black robe stood with his hands behind his back. His appearance was handsome, but his skin was pale, as if he hadn't seen the sun for a long time. His eyes were pure black, like two black holes. As he stood there, he looked like a demon lord. It's one of the four emperors, Hades Emperor, Holy Yama. Upon seeing this figure, an uproar broke out in the surrounding area. The outstanding talents of the four sovereigns had extremely important statuses. In Sky Burial Island, they could be said to be the mainstay of the main force. They were the only ones who could resist the war and calamity stars and the heavenly talents of the dark world. As for Witch Wan, she was standing on another warship. As soon as the Holy Yama arrived, his gaze locked onto Duguchioma. A wave of hostility spread out. Are you the one who Duguchiomo? The one whom Wan has high hopes for? The Holy Yama's voice was cold. Holy Yama. Duga's expression remained unchanged. He also knew that if he wanted to obtain the Demon Extermination Heart Sutra of the Demon Extermination sect, he would need Witch Wan's help. In this way, he would definitely clash with the Holy Yama. There was no doubt about the Holy Yama's strength. As one of the four emperors, he was on the same level as Huang Qianqiu. However, Duguchioma wasn't afraid at all. After all, his temperament was extremely cold, and he didn't have the emotion of fear at all. I'm warning you, give up as soon as possible. Otherwise, Sky Burial Island will be your grave. The Holy Yama said indifferently. Princess Luoho looked worried when she heard this. Duguchioma was expressionless. He said indifferently, if you have the ability, you can try. Sensing the thick smell of gunpowder, some of the martial artists from the various forces faintly revealed a trace of worry on their faces. The battle on Sky Burial Island this time was a battle between the heavenly talents of the South Horizon region and the Dark World. If the heavenly talents of the South Horizon region fought seriously, it would obviously affect the overall situation. Just as everyone was extremely worried, people from other forces arrived in the distant sky. They were the Heavenly God Sword sect and the Battle God Saber sect. On the Battle God Saber sect's side, Dao Wuming and Gu Zun were both there. On the Heavenly God Sword sect's side, Chu Xuanjin and the others stood at the bow of the ship. Behind them, there was a golden dragon ship. There was no doubt about the person sitting on it. Di Haotian is here. Many exclamations sounded from all directions. There were also many heavenly talents with traces of reverence and admiration in their eyes. As one of the one emperor and four emperors, Di Haotian's strength was undoubtedly the best in the entire South Horizon region. Under Di Haotian's brilliance, even Chu Xuanjin, who had been in the limelight in the Holy Emperor realm, dimmed a lot. Many people present once again cast their gazes on Yi Guchen. The feud between him and Di Haotian had spread throughout the entire South Horizon region. It was the topic of many people's leisure conversation. As the only existence who could seriously injure Di Haotian, Yi Guchen was now the focus of attention. Phew, Yi Guchen let out a deep breath. Had this day finally come? On the side of the Heavenly God Sword sect, when Donglu and the other saints were also there. However, he just looked at Yi Guchen coldly and did not say anything. With Di Haotian involved, the result was obvious. Chu Xuanjin stood straight and looked at Yi Guqin, saying, I didn't expect that you would really dare to come to the burial island. Where is Di Haotian? Won't he come out and meet me? Yi Guqin's lips curled into a cold smile. Meet him? Haha, do you think senior brother Haotian has the time to deal with you? He will be the pillar of the South Horizon region on the burial island, and compete with the heavenly talents of the dark world. Why would he care about an ant like you? Chu Xuanjin's words were as sharp as a knife. Ah, do you not care, or do you not dare? Yi Guqin said coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying aura comparable to that of a celestial palace venerable spread out from the golden dragon ship. That power was as if he was facing a god. This pressure, the celestial palace venerable realm? As expected, Di Haotian has taken that step long ago. He is ahead of his peers and has reached the honorable realm. As soon as this aura was released, it was like a meteorite falling into the sea, setting off huge waves. Among the younger generation, very few people could reach the venerable realm. Even the 4 emperors wanted to find an opportunity to break through to the venerable realm on the burial island. However, Di Haotian had already broken through. How could they compete? It's over, it's over. I thought that with Yi Guqin's current strength he could barely fight with Di Haotian. Now it seems that it's completely impossible. Yes, the gap between the major realms is too big. It's impossible to make up for it easily. Yi Guqin is in danger now. After learning that Di Haotian had broken through to the venerable realm, many people looked at Yi Guqin with pity in their eyes. Yi Guqin's expression did not change at all, but his eyes narrowed slightly. With Di Haotian's talent as a 10th grade supreme talent, it was not too surprising that he had broken through to the venerable realm. An aloof and indifferent voice came from the golden dragon ship. An ant who once relied on external objects to luckily hurt me is now qualified to be presumptuous in front of me? Chapter 1380. Hearing this indifferent voice that was like that of a god, the hearts of all the sky prides present trembled slightly. This was the extraordinary confidence of a 10th grade supreme talent. He could look down on anyone of his generation. Even Yi Guqin, who had just created a miracle in the Holy Emperor realm, was not taken seriously by him. Ha, you can try again this time. Yi Guqin did not lose his composure. After all, he was cold and arrogant. Di Haotian's words could not anger him. And if Di Haotian was still so arrogant and conceited, in the future, Dugu would definitely teach him a lesson. Sensing the intense tension in the air, all the sky prides present felt a sense of solemnity. In this battle on Sky Island, the South Horizon region would be in internal strife before they even met the talents of the Dark World. Seeing this, Elder Qing Song of the Luofu Sword Pavilion stepped forward and said, You have to understand that this battle is a battle between the South Horizon region and the Dark World. Although there are grievances between you, I suggest that we unite against the outside world first. Old Man Qing Song's words made many important figures from various forces nod their heads. Indeed, the Dark World was a great threat to the South Horizon region. If the talents of the South Horizon region failed in this battle on Sky Island, the consequences and impact would be very far-reaching. Yi Guqin did not say anything. Although he valued friendship and righteousness, he was not the kind of person who was completely righteous. It was impossible for him to give up dealing with Di Haotian and the others for the sake of fighting against the Dark World. At most, in the early stage, Yi Guqin would not take the initiative to kill the talents of the South Horizon region. Of course, if Nangong Jiuyun, Chu Xuanjin, Dongfang Ziyun, and the others wanted to deal with him, Yi Guqin would definitely not show any mercy. Well, since almost everyone is here, let's go in. An elder of an overlord force said. All the talents of the South Horizon region present rushed toward the Two-World Mountain. In the void above the Two-World Mountain, there was a spatial turbulence flowing. Vaguely, there seemed to be a huge island in the depths of the space, which was filled with an ancient and desolate aura. Is that Sky Burial Island? The closer he got, the more Yi Guqin could feel the wild and savage aura of Sky Burial Island. As expected of one of the forbidden lands, Yi Guqin was suddenly curious. Where were the three great forbidden lands of the South Horizon region? Why did the three hidden forces guard the three great forbidden lands? However, these secrets could only be explored in the future. Around the Two-World Mountain, there were some ancient teleportation arrays covered in dust. After activating them with heaven crystals, they could teleport the geniuses of the South Horizon region to Burial Sky Island. However, because the teleportation array was old, the destination of the teleportation was uncertain. Even if a group of people used the same teleportation formation, they could be teleported to different locations on Sky Burial Island. Soon Yi Guqin and the other prodigies of the Sword Dynasty landed on a teleportation array. Brother Yi, the entire Burial Island is divided into 4 islands: East, West, South, and North. Our South Horizon region occupies the East and South Islands. The Dark World occupies the West Island and the North Island. Do we need to gather together then? Jian Jinghong asked Yi Guqin. Because Yi Guqin was now Jiankui of the Sword Dynasty, he should be the leader. Hearing this, Yi Guqin thought for a while and said lightly, "This teleportation array is not stable. If you are teleported to the West Island and the North Island, you will be in danger. How about this? No matter where the prodigies of the Sword Dynasty are, we will gather on the South Island. As for what happens after that, we will plan it later," Yi Guqin said. Okay. All the swordsmen nodded. Including Yi Guqin, many prodigies of the South Horizon region stood on different teleportation arrays and activated them with heaven crystals. The teleportation arrays began to burst into blazing brilliance, and the space trembled like water waves. The figures of Yi Guqin and the others twisted, and then they disappeared from the spot. On the other side, Degu, Qiuma, and Princess Luoho also stood on a teleportation array and were directly teleported away. The prodigies of the South Horizon region were constantly being teleported to Burial Island. As for which of the 4 islands of the East, West, North, and South, that was up to fate. At this time, Di Haoyan also walked out of the dragon boat. His whole body was shrouded in brilliance, as if the Son of God had come to the world. If my investigation is correct, there is a mechanism key hidden in each of the 4 islands. As long as I can get the 4 mechanism keys, I can make the real core of Burial Island appear. And the earthly sovereign sword may be among them. Di Haoyan thought to himself. For him, nothing was more important than getting the earthly sovereign sword. Because as long as he could get the earthly sovereign sword, he would have gathered the 3 swords: heavenly sovereign, earthly sovereign, and human sovereign. At that time, the 3 swords would become one, and the primordial sword, the 3 sovereign sacred swords, would appear in the world. Compared to finding the earthly sovereign sword, dealing with Yi Guqin was not an important matter. Therefore, after entering Burial Island, Di Haoyan's main focus would be on collecting the 4 mechanism keys. As for dealing with Yi Guqin, he could leave it to others. Xuanjin, I'll leave Yi Guqin's matter to you. I still have important things to do, and Yi Guqin is not worth my time, Di Haoyan said indifferently. Yes, senior brother Haoyan. I will not accept your request. Chu Xuanjin cupped his fists. He was one of the top 10 childs, and he had the Sword King body. Other than Di Haoyan, he was not afraid of anyone. He was confident that he could even suppress Yi Guqin. Di Haoyan nodded slightly and stepped into the teleportation array. Next, almost all the prodigies of the South Horizon region were sent away by the teleportation array. At this moment, 4 maids in blue suddenly appeared in the distance, carrying an ice palanquin. In the palanquin sat a young girl with long, icy blue hair. When they saw the palanquin appear, many of the people present revealed a look of bewilderment. Could it be that the people from that place are here? Yes, it's the people from the Sealing Heaven Sacred Ocean, but it seems that they have never intervened in the Battle of Burial Island, right? I vaguely heard that the people from the Sealing Heaven Sacred Ocean came this time to deal with the Heaven Weeping Witch from the Dark World. I see. If the Heaven Weeping Witch fully matures, she can indeed create endless killing, and even cause a catastrophe in the South Horizon region. Many of the surrounding forces were discussing. The young girl with long, icy blue hair had already walked out of the palanquin. Her skin was as white as ice and snow. She was tall and slender, and her pupils were icy blue. She was very beautiful. There was also a faint chill lingering around her. The heaven weeping which should not exist in this world. And my karma, who has it? The young girl muttered in her heart, and stepped into a teleportation array. Many of the surrounding warriors were secretly speechless. Not only did this young girl come from the sealing heaven's sacred ocean, but she was also one of the 4 emperors. If she made a move, the heaven weeping witch from the dark world would be in great danger. Chapter 1381. Sky Burial Island used to be one of the forbidden areas of the Nantian region. Although it was no longer a forbidden area and had become a stage for the young geniuses of the 2 camps to fight, the eeriness and strangeness had never disappeared. This was a grayish-brown barren land surrounded by dark clouds. In the void, a ripple spread out, and Yi Guchen's figure appeared. Did they really separate? Yi Guchen looked around and found that Jian Jinghong and the others were not around. He was not too surprised. If it were an ordinary genius who encountered a situation of being alone on Sky Burial Island, he might be very nervous. However, Yi Guchen was very calm, not to mention his strength. Even in the 2 camps of the Nantian region and the Dark World, he could be regarded as a top genius among the younger generation. Therefore, as long as there were no accidents, Yi Guchen could protect himself. After checking the surrounding environment, Yi Guchen took out a special crystal. After injecting his genuine qi into it, a light curtain spread out. It showed the general layout of the entire Sky Burial Island. There were also many dense light spots scattered on it. These light spots represented the geniuses of the Nantian region. Through the light spots, it could be seen that most of the geniuses of the Nantian region had been transmitted to the East Island and the South Island. Only a small number of unlucky geniuses were transmitted to the West Island and the North Island of the Dark World. Yi Guchen was one of them. Am I in the West Island now? Yi Guchen's expression didn't change at all. Even though he knew that he was in the enemy camp, his expression didn't change at all. With his strength, it wasn't too difficult for him to return to the East Island and the South Island. To be honest, in the entire Dark World, only the War and Calamity twin stars and the 4 magnates could pose a threat to him. As for the other geniuses, Yi Guchen didn't have to be afraid of them at all. Yi Guchen didn't have to be too afraid of the 7 bullies or the 13 gangsters. Therefore, Yi Guchen was not in a hurry. He decided to start investigating Sky Burial Island. On this barren land, the wind was chilly, and there were white bones of unknown creatures on the ground. The sky-burying island was a very peculiar existence. It seemed like it was located in the South Horizon region, but it wasn't in the South Horizon region. It was located in the crevice of space. In the South Horizon region, and not in the South Horizon region? A light flashed through Yi Guchen's heart. He suddenly remembered what had happened in the Heavenless Sword realm. That mysterious consciousness clone, the young girl Ah Sang, had once said. Her true body seemed to be in the South Horizon region, but also not in the South Horizon region. Could it be that Ah Sang is related to Sky Burial Island? Yi Guchen wondered. He recalled that Ah Sang had said that her body was in the same place as the Earth Sovereign Sword. Didn't this mean that the Earth Sovereign Sword might be on Burial Sky Island? After coming to this conclusion, Yi Guchen was also quite surprised. He hadn't expected that Sky Burial Island could actually have such a secret buried there. At this moment, Yi Guchen's sea of consciousness suddenly flickered with a fluorescent light. It was the light of consciousness that Ah Sang had given him. With this light, Yi Guchen could find Ah Sang's true body. No wonder Di Haoyan did not seem to have much interest in attacking me. It turns out that his main objective was to come to Sky Burial Island to find the Earthly Emperor Sword. Yi Guchen finally understood. To Di Haoyan, the Earthly Sovereign Sword was more important than anything else. No wonder he was not in a hurry to deal with Yi Guchen. Looks like Di Haoyan must have gotten wind of some news. He'll definitely try his best to find the Earth Sovereign Sword. And I can't let him get the Earth Sovereign Sword. Yi Guchen's eyes were filled with determination. If Di Haoyan really managed to collect all 3 swords, Su Jianshi wouldn't be the only one in danger. Di Haoyan would also condense the Tri-Emperor Sacred Sword, and his strength would soar to an unimaginable level. However, if the Earth Sovereign Sword is really that easy to find, it would have already appeared by now. Di Haotian wouldn't be able to find the Earth Sovereign Sword in such a short time. I can make use of this time to make some preparations. After Yi Guqin made up his mind, he felt a little more pressure in his heart. He moved in the direction of the South Island. This was because he, Jian Jinghong, and the other Sword Sons had agreed to gather at the South Island after arriving at Sky Burial Island. After about half an hour, Yi Guqin still didn't see a single shadow. Looks like Sky Burial Island covers a huge area. Yi Guqin thought to himself. Just the West Island alone was like a miniature continent. One could imagine the size of the entire Sky Burial Island. At this moment, a few black shadows suddenly appeared in front of him. Are they the Sky Prides of the Dark World? Yi Guqin was on guard and looked over. However, to his surprise, those black shadows weren't human. They were like human-shaped fog, wearing a pitch-black helmet, armor, and so on. It was like an empty armor shell that was filled with black fog. Could they be living creatures from the Dark World? Yi Guqin's eyes turned serious. Before they came to Two Boundaries Mountain, Confuzi had warned them. Although Sky Burial Island wasn't as dangerous as the previous Forbidden Land, there would still be some living creatures from the Dark World. Confuzi had already told Yi Guqin and the others about the possible living creatures from the Dark World that they might encounter. This thing should be the so-called Yin Demon God, Yi Guqin muttered to himself. In the Dark World, there were also many clans. For example, the Soul-Devouring clan, which was the origin of Duga's talent in seeking demons, was a clan that was quite powerful in the Dark World. The Yin Demon God in front of them was also a living creature from the Dark World, but it was more ordinary. This kind of Yin Demon God had great resistance to physical attacks. They seemed to be strange creatures that had been formed by merging dark soul power with all kinds of battle armor. When Yi Guqin discovered the Yin Demon Gods, Yi Guqin's expression changed. The Yin Demon Gods had obviously discovered Yi Guqin. At that moment, they pounced on him like vengeful spirits, releasing soul sound waves at the same time. Such soul sound waves would shatter the sea of consciousness of some ordinary Sky Prides who didn't have any spiritual items protecting their sea of consciousness. However, Yi Guqin didn't do anything. The Yin Demon God's soul sound waves blasted into Yi Guqin's sea of consciousness, but it couldn't cause any harm to him. The Yin Demon Gods were obviously shaken as well. Under their helmets, 2 spots of ghostly fire flickered like eyes. It's my turn now. Yi Guqin raised his hand, and the 9-colored profound bomb spread out. To the Yin Demon Gods, physical attacks weren't very effective. Only the power of extreme yang, such as lightning and flames, could effectively kill them. To deal with the Yin Demon Gods, Yi Guqin didn't need to use his Chaos Divine Flame. Therefore, he only used the 9-colored profound bomb. Soon, with a few sharp cries, the Yin Demon Gods turned into ashes. Helmets, armors and other items fell to the ground. At that moment, Yi Guqin noticed that something was rolling out from the armors. This is... Yi Guqin was surprised. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.